Hi there, friends. Thanks for tuning in to Fiction Domain. Get ready for an incredible journey as we present, What If the Goblins Gave 7-Year-Old Harry to the Addams family to protect his vaults from Dumbledore? If you find our stories entertaining, a simple like and subscribe would mean everything to us. Your support motivates us to create more. Here we go. Chapter 1, Blood Tells the Golden Scales and Account Manager Snowclaw's office never lied. For 7 centuries, they had measured not just gold but intent, magic, and blood-sworn oaths. Today, they tilted dramatically to one side, the imbalance causing the ancient artifact to emit a low, mournful tone that raised the hackles on every goblin within earshot. Snowclaw ran one long, gnarled finger along the edge of the glowing ledger before him. The Potter accounts. Something was very wrong with the Potter accounts. Grip Hook. He barked, not looking up from the parchment where golden figures rearranged themselves continuously, like ants searching for a pattern. The younger goblin appeared at his door, bowing low. Account Manager Snowclaw. The Potter heir. Bring me his file, the complete file. And summon Ragnarok. Griphook's eyes widened slightly, the only indication of his surprise. The director of Gringotts was rarely troubled with individual account matters. At once, sir. He disappeared with the silent efficiency that goblins valued above all else. Snowclaw turned back to the scales. 7 years. For 7 years since the deaths of James and Lily Potter, small but consistent withdrawals had been made from the Potter family vault. Nothing excessive, nothing that would trigger the bank's standard protections, but the pattern had finally accumulated enough magical disturbance to activate the ancient scales. Someone had been siphoning funds from a noble house without proper authorization. The ledger pulsed again, a notation appearing in blood-red ink, Magical Guardian Override, Albus Percival Wulfric Brian Dumbledore. Snowclaw's lips peeled back from jagged teeth. So that's how you did it, old wizard. But no magical guardian has collection rights without the heir's knowledge after 7 years of age. Griphook returned with a thick folder bound in dark leather and sealed with the Potter crest, a stag and lily intertwined. Behind him came Director Ragnarok, his silver-streaked beard and battle-scarred face marking him as one of the eldest goblins in Britain. The scales have spoken? Ragnarok asked without preamble. Snowclaw nodded. The Potter heir turned 7 today. The family magic has awakened enough to recognize the imbalance. And where is young Mr. Potter now? Ragnarok took the folder, breaking the seal with a press of one clawed finger. According to Dumbledore's filed guardianship papers, with his maternal aunt and her family. Muggles. Snowclaw practically spat the last word. Ragnarok leafed through the documents, his expression darkening. These blood wards Dumbledore claims to have erected, they're tied to the Potter vaults. He's using the boy's own inheritance to power them. He looked up, eyes glinting dangerously. Griphook, prepare a team. We need to verify the heir's condition. The treaty, Griphook began hesitantly. Does not prevent us from checking on our clients, Ragnarok finished firmly. Especially when theft may be involved. Go. As Griphook hurried away, Ragnarok turned back to Snowclaw. If what I suspect is true, we may need to invoke the sanctuary protocols. Snowclaw's breath caught. Not used in 342 years. I am well aware. Ragnarok stared at the ledger, where more figures were appearing. Begin the search for potential guardians. Those with sufficient power to protect the boy from Dumbledore, but no allegiance to Britain's magical government. The list will be short. Then we'd better hope someone on it is suitable. Number 4 Privet Drive was perfectly normal, thank you very much. At least, that's what Vernon and Petunia Dursley desperately wanted everyone to believe. The lawn was immaculate, the curtains pressed, the car in the driveway polished to a mirror shine. Nothing about the house suggested it contained a small boy locked in the cupboard under the stairs. Harry Potter pressed his eye against the slats of the cupboard door, watching a shaft of afternoon sunlight inch its way across the hall carpet. His stomach growled painfully, punishment for the burnt toast he'd accidentally dropped that morning. No meals for the rest of the day, Aunt Petunia had declared. He didn't even know it was his birthday. No one had ever told him when he was born, just as no one had ever told him how his parents had really died, or why strange things happened around him sometimes, or why the scar on his forehead occasionally burned in his dreams. A sharp rap at the front door made Harry jerk back from his peephole. Visitors rarely came to number 4 except for Aunt Petunia's gossip friends or Uncle Vernon's business associates, and neither were expected today. "Boy! Stay quiet if you know what's good for you." Vernon's voice boomed as heavy footsteps crossed to the door. Harry held his breath, pressing back against the thin mattress that was his bed. He heard the door open, followed by his uncle's confused grunt. "Yes. What do you want?" Vernon's tone was immediately hostile. Whatever he saw on his doorstep wasn't welcome. "Mr. Dursley." The voice that answered was unexpectedly deep and raspy, with an accent Harry couldn't place. "We're here regarding your nephew, Harry Potter." The silence that followed was so complete Harry could hear his own heartbeat. Then came Vernon's spluttered response, "There's no Harry Potter here. You've got the wrong house. Good day." The sound of the door being pushed closed was followed by a strange metallic scrape. Harry's eyes widened as he realized the visitor had somehow stopped Uncle Vernon from shutting the door. "Mr. Dursley, we represent Gringotts Bank, the financial institution that manages the Potter estate. We have reason to believe the heir is residing here, and we are authorized to perform a welfare check." "Estate? What estate?" Vernon's voice had changed, taking on the greedy tone Harry recognized from when his uncle thought he could profit from something. "The boy's parents left him nothing. We've been saddled with him out of the goodness of our hearts." A different voice answered, even deeper than the first. "That is an interesting claim, given that the Potter vaults are among the oldest and most substantial in our care. Perhaps you should invite us inside to discuss this discrepancy." Harry heard his aunt's shrill voice join the conversation. "Vernon, don't let them in. They're kind." Too late. The door swung wide, and Harry caught glimpses of the strangest visitors he'd ever seen. Short, barely reaching his uncle's chest, but broad-shouldered and dressed in what looked like expensive suits. Their faces, what Harry could see through the cupboard slats, were sharp-featured with pointed ears and teeth that seemed too numerous for their mouths. "Where is the boy?" the first visitor demanded. "Now see here," Vernon began blustering, but was cut off by a strange humming sound. Harry watched in disbelief as a golden light filled the hallway, pulsing outward from a device one of the visitors held. The light seemed drawn to Harry's cupboard, collecting around the door in a bright outline. "You keep the heir to an ancient and noble house, in a cupboard?" The cold fury in the visitor's voice made Harry shiver despite the summer heat. Vernon and Petunia's protests died as the lead visitor strode to the cupboard and tore the lock from the door with a casual strength that belied his size. The door swung open, and Harry found himself face to face with a creature he'd only glimpsed in the storybooks at school. A goblin. A real goblin was staring at him with intelligent black eyes set in a face that might have been carved from weathered stone. "Mr. Potter," the goblin said, his voice softening slightly. "My name is Griphook. I represent Gringotts Bank, which holds your family's assets in trust until you come of age." Harry blinked, too stunned to respond. Family assets? Trust? The words meant nothing to him. "He's lying," Vernon shouted from behind Griphook. "The boy's parents were worthless drunks who died in a car crash. They left him nothing." The goblin didn't even turn around. "Mr. Dursley, I suggest you refrain from further slander against the Potter name, or you may find yourself explaining your falsehoods to more dangerous entities than myself." Griphook extended a hand to Harry. "Please come with me, Mr. Potter. There are irregularities with your accounts that require your attention." Harry hesitated. "But I don't have any money. And Uncle Vernon won't let me, your uncle has no legal authority over you beyond what was falsely granted by certain parties who will soon answer for their actions. Griphook's gaze softened further. You have been lied to, Mr. Potter. About many things. We goblins detest lies almost as much as we detest thieves. Something in the goblin's steady gaze gave Harry courage. Slowly, he reached out and took the offered hand, surprised by the warm, rough texture of the goblin's skin. As he stepped out of the cupboard, Harry saw 4 more goblins in the hallway, each holding what appeared to be golden instruments pointed at his aunt and uncle, who were pressed against the wall, faces pale with fear. What about my things? Harry asked, thinking of the few broken toys and oversized clothes that were his only possessions. Griphook's eyes narrowed as he looked back into the cupboard. Do you wish to keep any of these items? Harry considered, then shook his head. No. They're all Dudley's cast-offs anyway. Then we shall provide you with more suitable possessions. Griphook turned to the Dursleys. The Potter heir will not be returning to your care. However, we will be returning to discuss compensation for your stewardship. The way he said the last word made it sound like a curse. Vernon seemed to swell with indignation. Now you listen here. We never asked for the boy. Dumbledore left him on our doorstep with nothing but a letter, Dumbledore. Griphook interrupted sharply. Albus Dumbledore personally placed Mr. Potter with you. Of course he did. Petunia snapped. Left the freak on our doorstep in the middle of the night like a bottle of milk. Said we had to take him in to maintain the blood protection or some such nonsense. The goblins exchanged significant looks that Harry couldn't interpret. This information will be added to our investigation, Griphook said curtly. Come, Mr. Potter. Director Ragnarok is waiting. As Harry followed Griphook out the door, he couldn't help looking back at the only home he could remember. Aunt Petunia and Uncle Vernon watched from the hallway, Vernon's face purple with rage, Petunia's pinched with fear. For a moment, Harry felt a twinge of uncertainty. Then he remembered the cupboard, the hunger, the endless chores, and Dudley's fists. Whatever waited beyond Privet Drive had to be better than what he was leaving behind. Gringotts Bank was unlike anything Harry could have imagined. The marble halls stretched impossibly high, while goblins and strangely dressed people with pointed hats and flowing robes hurried about on mysterious errands. Harry had been hustled through a side entrance, avoiding the main lobby, and taken deep into the bank where the hallways became narrower and the doors more ornate. They finally stopped before a set of golden doors engraved with strange symbols that seemed to shift when Harry looked directly at them. Director Ragnarok is our highest authority, Griphook explained quietly. The fact that he's personally overseeing your case indicates its seriousness. Harry swallowed nervously. Am I in trouble? Griphook's expression softened again, something Harry suspected didn't happen often. No, Mr. Potter. But those who have wronged you may well be. The doors swung open silently, revealing a circular chamber dominated by a massive desk carved from a single piece of dark wood. Behind it sat the oldest goblin Harry had seen yet, his silver-streaked beard reaching nearly to his waist, his fingers adorned with rings bearing gemstones the size of Harry's thumbnail. Harry Potter, the ancient goblin said, his voice resonating with authority. I am Ragnarok, director of Gringotts British branch. Please, sit. Harry perched on the edge of a chair that appeared specifically sized for humans, while Griphook took a smaller seat to one side. Do you know why you're here, Mr. Potter? Ragnarok asked. Harry shook his head. No, sir. I didn't even know about Gringotts until today. The Dursleys never told me anything about magic. Ragnarok's eyes narrowed. They kept your heritage from you entirely? They said my parents died in a car crash because my dad was drunk, Harry said quietly. They told me I should be grateful they took me in. The temperature in the room seemed to drop several degrees. Ragnarok's fingers tightened on his desk, leaving small indentations in the wood. Your parents, James and Lily Potter, were murdered defending you from a dark wizard called Voldemort, Ragnarok said bluntly. They were wealthy, respected members of magical society, and they left everything to you, their only child. Harry felt as though the floor had dropped from beneath him. They weren't drunks. Your father was the lord of an ancient and noble house. Your mother was one of the brightest witches of her generation. Both fought bravely against dark forces that threatened our world. Ragnar's voice softened slightly. And they loved you very much, Mr. Potter. Of that, I am certain. Tears prickled at Harry's eyes, but he blinked them back. 7 years of Dursley conditioning had taught him that crying solved nothing. Then why was I sent to live with the Dursleys? Didn't my parents have friends? Other family? Ragnar exchanged a glance with Griphook. That, Mr. Potter, is one of many questions we are currently investigating. What we do know is that someone has been making unauthorized withdrawals from your family vaults since your parents' deaths. Stealing from me? Harry asked, surprising himself with the flash of anger he felt. Precisely. Ragnar pushed a ledger across the desk. Albus Dumbledore, using his self-appointed position as your magical guardian, has been siphoning funds for purposes unknown. Harry stared at the ledger, unable to make sense of the columns of numbers. Who is Albus Dumbledore? The headmaster of Hogwarts School of Witchcraft and Wizardry, supreme mugwump of the International Confederation of Wizards, and chief warlock of the Wizengamot, Ragnar recited, his tone making it clear these titles impressed him not at all. A wizard of considerable power and influence. And he's been stealing from me? Why? That remains unclear. However, the irregularities triggered ancient protections within your family vault, which is why we investigated and found you in those conditions. Ragnar's disgust was evident. As you have now reached your 7th year, certain options become available to us under Goblin banking law. Harry leaned forward. What options? The sanctuary protocols, Griphook supplied. When an heir is at risk, Gringotts may place them with a suitable guardian until they come of age, someone with the power and resources to protect both the heir and their assets. You mean? I wouldn't have to go back to the Dursleys. Hope, an unfamiliar emotion to Harry, bloomed in his chest. Never again, Ragnar confirmed. We have identified a family that meets our criteria. They are wealthy, powerful, and practice a form of magic older than what is taught at Hogwarts. Most importantly, they have no ties to Albus Dumbledore or the British Ministry of Magic. Who are they? Harry asked. Ragnar smiled for the first time, revealing pointed teeth. They are the Addams family. An ancient line, with roots in many magical traditions. They live primarily in America but have residences throughout the world, including one here in Britain that has been awakened in preparation for your arrival. And they want me. Harry couldn't keep the disbelief from his voice. We contacted them this morning with the situation. Their response was immediate and enthusiastic. Ragnar picked up a letter bearing a strange wax seal that resembled a raven. They said, and I quote, "Any child being drained of his lifeblood through financial exploitation is practically family already." Harry wasn't entirely sure what to make of that statement, but the goblins seemed to find it appropriate. When would I meet them? He asked. Today, if you wish it, Ragnar replied. But first, there is the matter of confirming your identity and health. What followed was a bewildering series of tests. A drop of Harry's blood on an enchanted parchment revealed not only his parentage but a detailed accounting of his physical condition that made the goblins mutter angrily in their own language. A crystal passed over his body hummed discordantly when it reached his scar, causing further concern. Malnourishment, untreated injuries, eyesight improperly corrected, and something else. Ragnar studied the crystal with a frown. We will need to address this before you meet your new guardians. Harry was led to another chamber where goblin healers, at least, that's what Harry assumed they were, performed more tests and administered potions that tasted vile but sent warmth spreading through his body. His broken glasses were replaced with new ones that made the world startlingly clear, and his oversized clothes were exchanged for properly fitting garments that felt softer than anything he'd ever worn. By the time they returned to Ragnar's office, Harry felt better than he could ever remember feeling. The persistent ache in his back from sleeping on the cupboard's thin mattress had vanished, and the gnawing hunger that had been his constant companion was replaced by comfortable fullness from the meal the healers had insisted he eat. "The Addamses have arrived," Ragnar announced as they entered. "They are waiting in the reception hall. Are you ready to meet them, Mr. Potter?" Harry straightened his new clothes nervously. "Do they know about how the Dursleys treated me?" "We provided them with the general situation, yes." Ragnar's expression softened slightly. "The Addams family has a unique perspective on suffering, Mr. Potter. They believe it builds character. However, they draw a clear line between chosen hardship and inflicted cruelty. The Dursleys' treatment of you falls firmly into the latter category." "What if they don't like me?" The question escaped before Harry could stop it. Griphook answered this time. "The Addamses judge people not by conventional standards of likability, but by the darkness and resilience of their souls. You have endured much, yet remain unbroken. They will respect that greatly." This wasn't entirely reassuring, but Harry nodded anyway. Whatever waited for him in the reception hall had to be better than going back to Privet Drive. The walk through Gringotts marble corridors seemed both too long and too short. Harry's mind raced with questions about these mysterious people who might become his new guardians. What did Ragnar mean by a unique perspective on suffering? What kind of magic did they practice that was older than what was taught at Hogwarts? Before he was ready, they arrived at a set of bronze doors inlaid with silver. 2 goblin guards stood at attention on either side, their expressions inscrutable. "Remember, Mr. Potter," Ragnar said quietly. "The Addams family may seem strange to you at first. They do not conform to ordinary wizarding standards, let alone Muggle ones. But they are powerful allies and fiercely protective of those they consider family." Harry took a deep breath and nodded. "I'm ready." The doors swung open. The reception hall was a vast, circular chamber with a domed ceiling enchanted to show the night sky despite it being daytime outside. Floating candles cast dancing shadows across marble walls adorned with goblin battle scenes. In the center of the room stood 4 figures who could only be the Addamses. Harry's first impression was that they looked like they'd stepped out of one of the old black and white films Aunt Petunia sometimes watched when she thought no one was paying attention. The man wore an impeccably tailored pinstriped suit and sported a thin mustache that curled at the ends. Beside him stood a woman so striking that Harry couldn't help but stare, tall and elegant in a clinging black dress that seemed to flow like liquid shadow, her skin pale as moonlight, her eyes dark and penetrating. 2 children completed the tableau, a girl about Harry's age with long black braids and a solemn expression that suggested she rarely smiled, and a pudgy boy slightly older who was examining one of the battle murals with disturbing enthusiasm. "Ah, the young Potter heir." The man strode forward with theatrical grace, hand extended. "Gomez Addams, at your service. This is my wife, Morticia, and our children, Wednesday and Pugsley." Harry hesitantly shook the offered hand, surprised by the man's exuberant grip. "Hello," he managed, suddenly painfully aware of how small and skinny he was compared to Pugsley. "I'm Harry." "Of course you are, dear," Morticia glided forward, her movement so smooth she appeared to float rather than walk. She bent slightly to look into Harry's eyes, and he found himself unable to look away from her intense gaze. Such old eyes in such a young face. Suffering does leave its mark, doesn't it? Exquisite. Harry wasn't sure how to respond to that, but Morticia didn't seem to expect an answer. She straightened and turned to Ragnar. "Director, the goblins have done well by this child. We accept the responsibility of guardianship as proposed." Ragnar bowed slightly. "The arrangements have been prepared according to the terms discussed. Mr. Potter's vaults will remain under goblin management, with oversight from both yourselves and our inheritance department." "Splendid." Gomez clapped his hands together. And what of the irregularities that brought young Harry to our attention? Our investigation continues, Griphook replied. However, with your guardianship established, Albus Dumbledore's access to the Potter vaults has been terminated. Excellent, Morticia murmured. Nothing builds character quite like having one's nefarious schemes thwarted. The girl, Wednesday, had moved closer to Harry during this exchange. She studied him with an unblinking stare that reminded him of a documentary about predatory birds he'd glimpsed once while cleaning the living room. You have a curse scar, she said flatly. Does it hurt? Harry's hand reflexively went to his forehead. Sometimes. In my dreams. Wednesday nodded as though this confirmed something important. Pain in dreams is significant. Grandmama will want to examine it. Don't frighten the boy, Wednesday, Morticia chided gently. Harry, my mother is quite skilled in the older magics. She may be able to help with your scar, should you wish it. The older magics? Harry repeated questioningly. Gomez twirled his mustache. The magic of blood and bone, of shadow and spirit. The original craft, practiced long before wizards started waving little sticks around and saying pseudo-Latin phrases. It's considerably more visceral, Wednesday added, a hint of something like enthusiasm creeping into her monotone. We still use wands for certain applications, but they're crafted differently, generally incorporating human remains. Harry's eyes widened, and Pugsley chose this moment to rejoin the conversation. I've got a wand with great-grandfather Addams's femur as the core, he said proudly. Makes the best explosions. Children, we're getting ahead of ourselves, Morticia intervened smoothly. Harry will have plenty of time to learn about our magical traditions. For now, perhaps we should complete the formalities and take him home. Ragnarok nodded and produced a sheaf of parchments. The guardianship contract requires blood signatures from all parties. What followed was a ceremony unlike anything Harry could have imagined. Rather than signing with ink, each of the Addamses pricked their fingers without hesitation and pressed bloody fingerprints to the parchment. When it was Harry's turn, Wednesday helpfully offered a wickedly sharp little dagger from somewhere in her dress. Family heirloom, she explained as Harry hesitantly took it. Belonged to Calpurnia Addams. She used it to remove the hearts of unfaithful suitors. Wednesday, darling, save the family history for after the ceremony, Morticia said, though her tone suggested she was more amused than disapproving. Harry carefully pricked his finger and pressed it to the parchment where indicated. The moment his blood touched the surface, the document glowed with a deep crimson light that pulsed once, twice, then settled into a steady golden hue. The magic accepts the bond, Ragnarok declared formally. Harry James Potter is now under the guardianship of the Addams family until he reaches his majority at 17, or until such time as he claims his lordship through blood right of conquest. Blood right of conquest? Harry questioned. A matter for another day, Ragnarok said with unusual gentleness. For now, Mr. Potter, go with your new guardians. The Goblins of Gringotts will ensure your inheritance remains secure until you are ready to claim it. Gomez clapped a hand on Harry's shoulder. Well, my boy. Ready to see your new home? Before Harry could answer, Morticia added, we've prepared the strangling room for you. It has the loveliest view of the family graveyard. Harry blinked, wondering if he'd misheard. The strangling room? Named for Great-Aunt Strangula, who met her end there, Wednesday explained matter-of-factly. The vines are mostly dormant now, though they do occasionally grab for exposed ankles during the full moon. How interesting, Harry managed. Oh, it's dreadfully dull most of the time, Pugsley said disappointedly. But if you're really nice to them, sometimes they'll show you how they got Great-Aunt Strangula. Want me to demonstrate with you? Pugsley, manners, Gomez admonished. We don't offer to strangle our guests until they've been with us at least a week. Family tradition. But father, Harry's not a guest anymore. He's family now, Wednesday pointed out with impeccable logic. Ah. Quite right, my brilliant girl. Gomez beamed with pride. In that case, perhaps we should let Harry settle in first, Morticia interrupted smoothly. There will be plenty of time for family traditions later. Harry looked from one Addams to another, trying to determine if they were joking. Their expressions gave nothing away. "Thank you," he said cautiously to Morticia. "I think I'd like to see the room first." "Of course, dear," she replied with a smile that somehow managed to be both warm and chilling. "Children, remember how disorienting your first exposure to quicksand was? Harry is experiencing something similar with our family customs." This explanation seemed to satisfy Wednesday and Pugsley, though the latter looked slightly disappointed at having to postpone his demonstration. Ragnarok cleared his throat. "A portkey has been prepared to transport you directly to the Addams residence. Given the circumstances, we thought it best to avoid public magical transportation." Gomez produced what appeared to be a tarnished silver hand mirror from his pocket. "Family heirloom, belonged to cousin forsaken Addams. Legend has it she was so hideous that when she looked into this mirror, it transported her to another dimension out of self-defense. Been a reliable portkey ever since." Harry hesitantly reached out to touch the mirror as the others did. The moment his finger made contact, he felt a violent jerk behind his navel, and the world dissolved into a whirl of color and sound. His last coherent thought before being swept away from Gringotts was that his life had just taken a turn that even his wildest dreams couldn't have prepared him for. The Addams mansion materialized around Harry like a nightmare given physical form, a sprawling Victorian monstrosity of weathered stone and twisted spires that seemed to defy architectural logic. Gargoyles leered from rain-darkened eaves, while thorny vines with suspiciously crimson blooms climbed the walls. The ground stretched out in all directions, a wild tangle of overgrown gardens, ancient trees with grasping branches, and what appeared to be a private cemetery complete with crumbling mausoleums. And yet, despite its foreboding appearance, there was something about the mansion that whispered home to a part of Harry he hadn't known existed. "Welcome to Addams Manor, Harry," Morticia said, watching his reaction carefully. "This is our British estate. We maintain our primary residence in America, but given the circumstances, we thought it best to remain closer to Gringotts while the investigation proceeds." "It's big," Harry managed, still dizzy from the portkey travel. "Been in the family for 12 generations, Gomez announced proudly. Built on an ancient Celtic burial ground. The local villagers used to claim it was haunted until great-grandfather Addams invited them all to dinner to meet the actual ghosts. Most educational evening for all involved. Though I understand the survivor never did regain his power of speech." Harry wasn't sure whether to laugh or be concerned, so he settled for a noncommittal nod. "Come inside, dear," Morticia encouraged. "Thing will be anxious to meet you." "Thing?" Harry asked as they approached the massive front doors, which appeared to be bound with iron and carved with scenes of what looked disturbingly like torture. His question was answered when the doors swung open seemingly of their own accord, and a disembodied hand scuttled across the threshold to greet them. Harry yelped in surprise, jumping back. "Thing, manners," Morticia chided gently. "Harry isn't accustomed to our ways yet." The hand, Thing, somehow managed to look contrite despite having no face. It extended one finger to Harry in what was clearly meant to be a handshake. Gathering his courage, Harry reached out and shook the offered digit. Nice to meet you." "Thing." Thing seemed pleased by this, patting Harry's hand encouragingly before scurrying up to perch on Gomez's shoulder. "Excellent." Gomez beamed. "First introduction is always the hardest. Wait until you meet Lurch and cousin Itt." The interior of the mansion matched its exterior in Gothic extravagance. Candelabras cast flickering shadows across walls hung with peculiar artwork, portraits whose eyes seemed to follow Harry, landscapes of desolate moors under stormy skies, and what appeared to be medieval instruments of torture rendered in loving detail. The furniture was antique and imposing, all dark wood and velvet upholstery, while cobwebs draped from crystal chandeliers like macabre decorations. "Lurch!" Gomez called out. "Where is that man?" "Luwork." A deep groan echoed through the hall moments before a towering figure appeared with such suddenness that Harry flinched. The man, if he was indeed a man, stood well over 7 feet tall, with a pallid, rectangular face, sunken eyes, and a formal butler's attire that somehow enhanced rather than diminished his cadaverous appearance. "You rang?" The words rumbled from Lurch's chest like distant thunder. "Ah, Lurch. Meet the newest addition to our family, Harry Potter. Harry, this is Lurch, our butler and harpsichord virtuoso." Lurch looked down at Harry with an expression that might have been meant as welcoming but came across as vaguely dyspeptic. He extended a massive hand that enveloped Harry's completely when they shook. "Welcome, to the family," Lurch intoned, each word measured and deliberate. "Thank you," Harry replied, impressed despite himself by the sincerity he heard beneath the butler's ominous tone. "Lurch, please inform Grandmama that we have arrived with Harry," Morticia requested. "And have her prepare some of her special revitalizing potion. I believe our young ward could benefit from its properties." Lurch groaned in acknowledgement and shuffled away, his footsteps making the floorboards creak ominously. "Grandmama's potions are legendary," Wednesday informed Harry, her solemn face betraying a hint of pride. "The ministry tried to regulate her once. The enforcement wizard developed scales and a forked tongue. They never came back. Your grandmother sounds formidable," Harry said carefully. "Oh, she is," Pugsley agreed enthusiastically. "Last week she caught me stealing eyeballs from her ingredient cabinet and turned my ears inside out for 3 days. It was awesome." Before Harry could process this disturbing information, an elderly woman with wild white hair emerged from what he presumed was the direction of the kitchen. Despite her advanced age, she moved with surprising agility, a wooden spoon clutched in one gnarled hand. "So this is the Potter boy," she cackled, circling Harry with open curiosity. "Skinny little thing, isn't he? Nothing a few weeks of my cooking won't fix." "Harry, this is my mother, Eudora Addams," Morticia introduced. "Though we all call her Grandmama." "Hello, ma'am," Harry said politely. Grandmama reached out with startling quickness and grasped his chin, tilting his face to examine his scar. Nasty bit of magic there. Dark, very dark. And familiar somehow." She squinted thoughtfully. "Reminds me of those horrid soul jars that Herpo the Foul used to make. Always thought those were in poor taste, fragmenting one's soul like cheap pottery." Harry had no idea what Grandmama was talking about, but her words seemed to have a profound effect on Morticia and Gomez. "Mother, are you suggesting?" Morticia began, her normally composed features showing genuine concern. "I'm not suggesting anything yet," Grandmama replied, releasing Harry's chin. "Need to run some tests first. But if it's what I think it is." She trailed off, her expression darkening. "Well, we Addamses know a thing or two about soul magic, don't we?" "Indeed we do," Gomez agreed, his usual exuberance temporarily subdued. "If that monster left a piece of himself in our boy, we'll deal with it the Addams way." "The Addams way?" Harry asked nervously. Wednesday leaned closer to whisper in his ear. "That means ritual sacrifice under the full moon, usually involving rare poisons and at least one beheading." "Wednesday," Morticia said sharply. "Don't frighten Harry with exaggerations. We haven't performed a proper ritual sacrifice since your Aunt Ophelia's wedding. These days we prefer soul extraction via the ancestral dagger." She smiled reassuringly at Harry. "Much cleaner, and the screaming rarely lasts more than a minute." Harry swallowed hard, wondering if he'd made a terrible mistake in coming here. Then again, the Dursleys had starved and worked him like a slave for years. At least the Addamses seemed to genuinely care about his welfare, even if their methods sounded extreme. "I think Harry's had quite enough excitement for one day," Morticia observed, noting his pallor. "Pugsley, Wednesday, why don't you show him to his room while Grandmama prepares dinner?" The children led Harry up a grand staircase that creaked ominously with every step. Portraits lining the walls whispered as they passed, and Harry could have sworn one elderly gentleman in Elizabethan dress winked at him. "Are those paintings alive?" he asked hesitantly. "Of course," Wednesday replied. "All the Addams ancestors remain with us in some form. Great-great-grandmother Desdemona is particularly vocal. She was burned as a witch in 1693. Falsely accused," Pugsley added. "She was actually a necromancer. The witchcraft was just a hobby." Harry found himself oddly comforted by the Addams children's matter-of-fact acceptance of their family's eccentricities. There was no artifice to them, no pretense of normality like the Dursleys maintained. The Addamses were strange and seemed proud of it. "Here's your room," Wednesday announced, stopping before a heavy oak door adorned with intricate carvings of what appeared to be vines strangling various creatures. The strangling room. With some trepidation, Harry pushed open the door, bracing himself for something horrific. Instead, he found himself looking at a chamber that was oddly welcoming. True, the four-poster bed was draped in dark velvet, the windows were tall and Gothic, and the wallpaper featured a subtle pattern of what might have been deadly nightshade. But the room was spacious, clean, and contained more personal belongings than Harry had ever had in his life. "We weren't sure what you liked," Pugsley explained, gesturing to a bookshelf stocked with volumes. "So Mother included a variety, basic hexes for the busy and vexed, most potency potions, the complete works of Edgar Allan Poe. And I added the illustrated guide to poisonous fungi," Wednesday said with what might have been a hint of shyness. "It was my first field guide." Harry walked slowly around the room, taking in details that spoke of careful preparation, a writing desk with parchment, quills, and ink, a wardrobe that, when opened, revealed clothes in his size, even a terrarium containing what appeared to be a small, two-headed snake. "That's Socrates and Plato," Wednesday said, noting his interest in the reptile. "Mother thought you might like a familiar, and she has a gift for divining affinity." "They're baby runespores," Pugsley added. "Magical three-headed snakes from Africa, but this one's missing a head. Makes him a collector's item." Harry approached the terrarium cautiously. The snake, or snakes, raised both heads to watch him, tongues flicking curiously. "Hello," Harry said without thinking. To his astonishment, both heads answered in perfect English, "A speaker." "Brother, he's a speaker." "How fascinating. No one's properly conversed with us since the egg." Harry turned to Wednesday and Pugsley in shock, only to find them staring at him with expressions of intense interest. "You're a Parselmouth," Wednesday stated, her dark eyes gleaming with newfound respect. "You can speak to serpents." I can." Harry looked back at the snake. "Is that what I was doing?" "Indeed, the left head, Socrates," Harry presumed, confirmed. "Though to us, it sounds like perfectly normal speech. The ability is quite rare," the right head, presumably Plato, added. "And often misunderstood by the narrow-minded." Pugsley looked positively delighted. "Wait until Father hears about this. He's been trying to learn Parseltongue for years, even let a viper bite his tongue once to see if the venom would help. It didn't, but he said the hallucinations were most educational." "Is it bad? Being able to talk to snakes?" Harry asked, remembering how unusual abilities had been treated at the Dursleys. Wednesday's expression softened almost imperceptibly. "In this house, Harry, nothing genuinely magical is considered bad. Unusual abilities are treasured, not feared." Something tight in Harry's chest loosened at her words. For the first time in his memory, he'd revealed an abnormality and hadn't been punished or locked away for it. A soft gong echoed through the mansion, causing both Addams' children to perk up. "Dinner," Wednesday explained. "Grandmama gets testy if we're late, and her hexes itch for days." Harry followed them back downstairs, his mind still reeling from everything that had happened since the Goblins appeared at Privet Drive. He'd discovered he was wealthy, learned his parents hadn't died as the Dursleys claimed, been adopted by a family of what appeared to be cheerfully macabre magic users, and discovered he could talk to snakes, all in the span of a single day. The dining room matched the rest of the house in Gothic splendor. A long table of darkly polished wood dominated the space, surrounded by high-backed chairs carved with the same raven motif Harry had noticed on the Addams seal at Gringotts. Candles in skull-shaped holders provided most of the illumination, supplemented by a chandelier that appeared to be made from actual human bones. Gomez sat at the head of the table, with Morticia to his right. Grandmama bustled in from a side door, carrying a tureen that emitted ominous green vapor. "Swamp adder soup to start," she announced proudly. "With just a hint of hemlock for flavor." Harry froze halfway into his chair, alarmed until he noticed the others serving themselves with enthusiasm. "Don't worry, dear," Morticia said, noting his hesitation. "The Addams constitution is remarkably robust when it comes to substances others might find challenging. However, we've asked Grandmama to prepare a milder version for you until your system adjusts." Lurch appeared at Harry's elbow with a different bowl, the contents of which looked more like normal vegetable soup. Harry accepted it gratefully. "The boy speaks Parseltongue, father," Pugsley announced as soon as everyone was seated. "Had a whole conversation with Socrates and Plato." Gomez's eyes lit up. "Magnificent. A rare gift indeed. You know, Cousin Slithering Addams was a renowned parselmouth, trained serpents to deliver the post. Most efficient system, though it did lead to some unfortunate incidents with the neighbors' cats. The ability to communicate with serpents has deep magical significance," Morticia added thoughtfully. "Particularly in the older traditions. The snake represents wisdom, rebirth, and healing in many cultures." "Not in Britain," Grandmama said, shaking her head. "Those stuffy British wizards think it's all about Salazar Slytherin and dark magic. Narrow-minded fools." "Salazar Slytherin?" Harry asked, cautiously tasting his soup, which was surprisingly delicious. "One of the founders of Hogwarts School of Witchcraft and Wizardry," Morticia explained. "A powerful wizard with the gift of Parseltongue. History remembers him as somewhat controversial." "That's putting it mildly," Gomez chuckled. "Old Salazar had rather strong opinions about who should learn magic. Created quite the rift with the other founders. The British wizarding world divided into factions centuries ago," Wednesday elaborated. "Some following Slytherin's pure-blood philosophy, others advocating for wider magical education. The conflict persists to this day, with dark wizards like Voldemort representing the extreme of Slytherin's position." Harry nearly choked on his soup. "Voldemort, he's the one who killed my parents, right? Was he a parselmouth too?" A heavy silence fell over the table. The adults exchanged significant looks before Morticia answered. "Yes, Harry. The Dark Lord was known to possess that ability, among others. But magical gifts themselves are neither good nor evil, it's how one uses them that matters. The Addams family has always understood this," Gomez added with unusual seriousness. "We practice magic that many consider dark, yet we harm none who don't deserve it, and we never, ever betray family. Which you are now," Grandmama said firmly. "Blood-signed and magic-bound. No one, not Dumbledore, not the Ministry, and certainly not some self-styled Dark Lord, changes that." Harry looked around the table at these strange people who had taken him in without hesitation. Despite their eccentricities, or perhaps because of them, he felt a sense of belonging he'd never experienced with the Dursleys. "Thank you," he said quietly. "For everything." "No need for thanks, my boy," Gomez declared, his exuberance returning. "Now, who's ready for the main course? Grandmama has prepared her famous vulture cassoulet." As the meal progressed, Harry found himself relaxing despite the occasionally alarming food descriptions. The conversation flowed naturally, with the Addamses asking about his life, though they grew dangerously quiet when he described his cupboard, and sharing stories of their own exploits. By the time dessert arrived, a surprisingly normal-looking chocolate cake, though Grandmama insisted the secret ingredient was better left unmentioned, Harry had learned that Gomez was an enthusiastic fencer, explosive hobbyist, and amateur train wreck engineer, that Morticia cultivated carnivorous and poisonous plants with loving devotion, that Wednesday had a particular interest in medieval torture devices and their practical applications, and that Pugsley's hobbies included amateur demolition and experimenting with unusual chemicals. "Tomorrow we'll begin your proper education," Morticia announced as they finished eating. "The British magical curriculum is woefully lacking in the fundamental arts." "Will I still go to Hogwarts?" Harry asked, realizing he knew almost nothing about wizarding education. "When the time comes, if you wish it," Morticia confirmed. "You'll receive your letter at 11 like all British magical children. However, by then, you'll have a foundation in the older magics that few of your peers can claim. And we'll need to address that troublesome scar before then," Grandmama added, eyeing his forehead speculatively. "I'll start brewing the necessary potions tonight." "Nothing too strenuous for Harry's first week with us," Gomez cautioned, surprising Harry with his consideration. "Remember how Pugsley reacted to the blood moon ritual? 3 days with his skeleton on the outside. Most inconvenient for the poor boy." "A simple cleansing ceremony should suffice to start," Morticia agreed. "Perhaps on the next dark moon, with the proper preparations." Harry wasn't entirely sure what a cleansing ceremony entailed, but the way the Addamses discussed it, with a matter-of-fact acceptance of magic's reality, was refreshingly different from the Dursleys' rigid denial of anything supernatural. After dinner, the family retired to what Gomez called the conservatory, a room filled with strange plants that moved with unsettling sentience. Morticia tended to several of them, cooing encouragements as she pruned withered leaves and collected what appeared to be poisonous berries. "African strangler," she explained when she caught Harry watching. "Such a temperamental species. They require regular feeding to maintain their vigor." As if on cue, the plant lunged for a small cage containing what looked like a mouse. The rodent squeaked in terror as the vine wrapped around it and Harry quickly looked away. "Nature is beautiful in its brutality, isn't it?" Morticia observed, misinterpreting his discomfort as appreciation. "The constant dance of predator and prey, life and death in perfect balance." "I suppose so," Harry replied uncertainly. Morticia studied him with those penetrating dark eyes. "The Dursleys taught you to fear your own nature, didn't they? To hide your power, to pretend to be something you're not." Harry nodded slowly. "Anything unusual was punished. A common reaction among those who don't understand magic," Morticia said softly. "Fear of the unknown, fear of power they cannot possess or control. But you need never hide your true self here, Harry. In this house, the unusual is celebrated." As if to emphasize her point, a nearby plant suddenly erupted in blooms that emitted an eerie blue glow, while across the room, Pugsley demonstrated to Wednesday how he'd modified a toy soldier to explode with surprising force. "Your parents would be proud to see you embracing your heritage," Morticia continued. Lily Potter, in particular, was known for her brilliance and courage. Harry's attention snapped fully to Morticia. "You knew my mother?" "Not personally, no. But the magical world is smaller than it appears, especially for those who practice the older arts. Lily Potter's innovations in protective charms were discussed even in our circles." Morticia's expression softened further. "She died shielding you, Harry. That kind of sacrificial magic leaves a mark beyond the physical." Harry's hand drifted unconsciously to his scar. "Is that why I survived when no one else did? Because of what she did?" "It's certainly part of the explanation," Morticia acknowledged. "Though I suspect there's more to the story than what became public knowledge. The Goblins' discovery of financial irregularity suggests other forces at work, parties who might prefer that certain truths remain hidden." Before Harry could ask more questions, Gomez bounded over, wielding a fencing foil with characteristic enthusiasm. "Harry, my boy. Ever tried swordplay? Invigorating exercise. Sharpens the reflexes, strengthens the wrist, occasionally results in dramatic dueling scars, all benefits for a growing wizard." Despite his exhaustion, Harry found himself smiling at Gomez's infectious energy. I've never tried it, sir. Splendid. We'll start your lessons tomorrow. Nothing builds character like the constant threat of impalement. Gomez executed a complex series of maneuvers that sent him spinning across the room, narrowly avoiding decapitating a particularly aggressive-looking plant. Watching the Addams family in their natural environment, Harry felt a strange sense of peace settling over him. They were undeniably bizarre, potentially dangerous, and had comfort levels with death and pain that bordered on disturbing, but they were also genuine, accepting, and seemed to genuinely want him as part of their family. After years with the Dursleys, where he'd been treated as an unwelcome burden, the contrast was so profound it almost hurt. Eventually, Morticia noticed his drooping eyelids. I believe Harry has had quite enough excitement for one day. Wednesday, would you show him back to his room? The solemn girl nodded and led Harry back through the winding corridors of the mansion. As they walked, Harry found himself curious about the girl who was now, in some strange way, his sister. Have you always lived like this? He asked. With, all the unusual things. Wednesday considered the question with characteristic seriousness. The Addams family has maintained its traditions for centuries. What seems unusual to outsiders is simply our way of life. Don't other wizards find it strange? Most wizards don't know we exist, Wednesday replied. Those who do generally avoid us. The Addams approach to magic is considered unorthodox. Because of the older magic you practice? Wednesday nodded. Modern wizardry has become sanitized, separated from its primal roots. They use wands with cores from magical creatures rather than personal sacrifices. They speak invented incantations instead of invoking true names. They follow ministry regulations rather than the natural laws of magic itself. Despite her youth, Wednesday spoke with the conviction of someone reciting long-held family beliefs. Is that bad? Harry asked. It's limiting, she corrected. Not inherently wrong, just incomplete. Like learning to paint using only blue when the full spectrum exists. They reached Harry's room, and Wednesday paused at the door. One more thing you should know, she said, her dark eyes serious. The vines really do move during the full moon. Keep your bed curtains closed, and you'll be fine. With that reassuring advice, she left Harry to prepare for bed. The wardrobe contained pajamas that fit him perfectly, black silk with small silver ravens embroidered along the collar. The bed, when he cautiously tested it, proved to be the softest he'd ever encountered. As Harry settled between sheets finer than anything he'd ever touched, he found himself reflecting on the day's extraordinary events. In less than 24 hours, he'd gone from sleeping in a cupboard to lying in a four-poster bed in a mansion, from believing his parents died in a drunken car crash to knowing they were murdered protecting him, from being unwanted by the Dursleys to being welcomed by the Addamses. It was overwhelming, terrifying, and yet somehow right. As sleep began to claim him, Harry's last conscious thought was that for the first time in his memory, he was looking forward to tomorrow. In the shadowy corners of the room, the carved vines on the bedposts seemed to shift slightly, as if reaching toward the sleeping boy. But rather than threatening, their movement appeared almost protective, ancient magic recognizing and welcoming a kindred spirit to the strange sanctuary that was Addams Manor. Chapter 2, Lessons in the Macabre. Harry woke to the sound of screaming. For a disorienting moment, he thought he was back at Privet Drive, that Uncle Vernon had discovered some imagined transgression. Then his eyes adjusted to the gloom of the strangling room, and memory returned. The Goblins. Gringotts. The Addamses. The screaming continued, a long, drawn-out wail of what sounded like mortal agony. Harry scrambled out of bed, heart pounding. Was someone hurt? Should he help? He fumbled for his new glasses on the bedside table, nearly knocking over a small glass terrarium where Socrates and Plato slumbered, their two heads curled together. Good morning, young speaker, Socrates hissed drowsily as Harry's movements disturbed them. Did you sleep well? Someone's screaming, Harry replied urgently. I think they're hurt. The snake heads exchanged a glance that somehow managed to convey amusement. That's just Grandmama's wake-up call, Plato explained. The humans call it an opera record. Apparently, it's traditional. As if on cue, the door to Harry's room swung open, revealing Wednesday in a black nightgown, her hair still in braids but slightly disheveled from sleep. "You're awake," she stated flatly. "Good. Breakfast is in 20 minutes. Grandmama doesn't like tardiness." She paused, noting his alarm. "The screaming is Maria Callas. Mother plays her every morning. She finds it soothing." "Soothing," Harry repeated faintly. Wednesday's lips twitched in what might have been the ghost of a smile. "You'll get used to it. The bathroom is through there." She pointed to a door Harry hadn't noticed the night before. "Don't use the black soap unless you want your skin to turn temporarily transparent. Pugsley thinks it's amusing to switch the soaps." With that warning, she disappeared, leaving Harry to prepare for his first full day with the Addams family. The bathroom turned out to be a cavernous chamber of black marble and tarnished silver fixtures. The clawfoot bathtub had actual claws that scraped against the floor when Harry accidentally bumped it. He carefully avoided the black soap, opting instead for a green bar that smelled pleasantly of herbs and gave off a slight glow when wet. After dressing in clothes from the wardrobe, black trousers and a deep green shirt that fit him better than anything he'd ever worn, Harry made his way downstairs, following the sound of conversation and the smell of cooking. The dining room looked different in the morning light that filtered through tall, stained glass windows depicting what appeared to be scenes from the Spanish Inquisition. The Addams family was already seated, engaged in their morning routines. Gomez read from a newspaper whose headlines moved and changed as Harry watched, occasionally exclaiming with delight at particularly disastrous news. Morticia elegantly sipped from a black teacup while examining what looked like architectural plans. Pugsley was busy modifying what appeared to be a toy train with suspicious-looking additions, while Wednesday meticulously dissected something on her plate that Harry couldn't identify and wasn't sure he wanted to. "Ah, Harry. Good morning." Gomez folded his newspaper and beamed. "Sleep well? No nightmares? Visitations from ancestral spirits? Prophetic dreams of doom?" No, sir. Just regular sleep." "Pity. The ancestral spirits can be quite informative once you get past the moaning and rattling of chains." Gomez looked genuinely disappointed. "Perhaps tonight." "Harry, dear, come sit down." Morticia gestured to an empty chair beside her. "Grandmama has prepared a special breakfast for you." The elderly witch emerged from the kitchen, levitating several dishes before her without the use of a wand. She set a plate in front of Harry that contained, to his relief, what appeared to be normal eggs, sausages, and toast, though the toast was black. "Charcoal toast," Grandmama explained, noticing his hesitation. "Excellent for drawing out toxins. Heaven knows what those muggles have been feeding you." "Mostly nothing," Harry admitted, picking up a fork. The temperature in the room seemed to drop several degrees. Harry looked up to find all the Addamses staring at him, their expressions ranging from Morticia's cold fury to Gomez's uncharacteristic stillness. "Nothing?" Grandmama repeated, her voice dangerously soft. Harry shifted uncomfortably. "Well, I got meals most days. Unless I did something freakish, I mean, magical, or didn't finish my chores." Thing, who had been serenely passing marmalade, froze in the act of spreading it on Pugsley's toast. Even Lurch, standing stoically by the sideboard, emitted a low, rumbling groan that seemed to vibrate the glassware. "Harry," Morticia said with deliberate calm, "in this family, we celebrate the freakish and unusual. And children are never, ever denied food as punishment." "Barbaric practice," Gomez muttered, his normally jovial expression darkened to something genuinely menacing. "Even medieval torturers fed their victims. Kept the suffering going longer. We Addamses have always believed that proper nourishment is essential for developing one's full magical potential," Grandmama added, placing a goblet of deep purple liquid beside Harry's plate. "Drink this, child. It'll help restore what those monsters deprived you of." Harry cautiously sniffed the concoction. It smelled like blackberries with an undertone of something metallic. What is it? Just a restorative potion, Grandmama assured him. Blackberry juice, dragon's blood, powdered unicorn horn, all perfectly legal ingredients, more or less. Harry took a tentative sip and was surprised to find it tasted pleasant, leaving a tingling sensation as it went down. Warmth spread through his limbs, and he suddenly felt more alert, the lingering fatigue from yesterday's excitement melting away. Good, isn't it? Pugsley said, momentarily looking up from his train modification. Grandmama gave me the same thing after I accidentally blew myself up last year. Grew back my eyebrows in just a week. Harry wasn't sure how to respond to that, so he focused on his breakfast, which was delicious. As he ate, the conversation around the table gradually resumed its normal flow, though he noticed the adults exchanging significant glances when they thought he wasn't looking. We have a full day planned for you, Harry, Morticia announced as breakfast concluded. First, Gomez will take you to the family library to begin your education in magical theory. Then I thought you might enjoy a tour of the greenhouse. After lunch, Grandmama has requested time to examine your scar more thoroughly. And then explosives. Pugsley added enthusiastically. Perhaps we should save the demolitions lessons for next week, dear, Morticia suggested gently. Harry is still adjusting. Pugsley looked disappointed but nodded. We could start with basic poison recognition instead. An excellent compromise, Morticia agreed. Wednesday is quite the expert, aren't you, darling? Wednesday nodded solemnly. I've been studying poison since I was 4. I can show you which ones cause paralysis without stopping the heart, so the victim remains conscious throughout the entire experience. How educational, Harry managed, wondering if he should be concerned by how matter-of-factly the Addams children discussed such topics. Indeed. Gomez clapped his hands together. Well, no time like the present. To the library. The Addams library defied Harry's expectations in every way. Rather than the dusty, cobwebbed chamber of horror he'd half anticipated, it was a vast, circular room with towering shelves that reached toward a domed ceiling painted with constellations that actually moved. Comfortable reading nooks were scattered throughout, and enchanted ladders slid smoothly along the shelves, occasionally pausing to adjust a misplaced book. The content of those shelves, however, was decidedly unusual. Titles like Blood Rituals for Beginners, Communicating with the Restless Dead, and 1001 Creative Uses for Human Remains spoke to the Addams family's unique approach to magic. Magnificent, isn't it? Gomez spread his arms wide, beaming with pride. 17 generations of Addams scholars have contributed to this collection. Books the ministry would burn, scrolls they'd lock away, knowledge they'd suppress, all preserved here. It's amazing, Harry agreed honestly, awed by the sheer scale of the collection. Even if some of the subjects made him uneasy, the library itself was beautiful, suffused with ambient magic that made the air feel charged with possibility. Now then, Gomez rubbed his hands together eagerly. Let's start with the basics. What do you know about magic, my boy? Harry considered. Not much, really. The Dursleys forbade the word. I knew strange things happened around me sometimes, but I didn't know it was magic until the goblins came. Gomez's expression darkened briefly at the mention of the Dursleys but quickly brightened again. A clean slate. Excellent. We can skip all those tedious modern misconceptions and start with the fundamental truths. He led Harry to a reading area where several books had already been arranged on a table, along with parchment, quills, and a curious assortment of objects including what appeared to be a human skull, a silver dagger, and a bowl of dark liquid. Magic, Gomez began, his voice taking on an unusually serious tone, is not simply a tool or a skill, Harry. It is a fundamental force of nature, as essential as gravity or time. It flows through everything, living and dead, animate and inanimate. He picked up the skull, holding it reverently. This belonged to Great-Uncle Agonizing. Brilliant necromancer, though somewhat absent-minded toward the end. He once attempted to reanimate his own liver while it was still inside him. Fascinating results. Harry eyed the skull warily. Is he, still in there somehow? In a manner of speaking. The dead leave impressions, Harry. Magic remembers. Gomez set the skull down and dipped his fingers in the bowl of liquid, which Harry now realized was blood. Modern wizards have forgotten this. They treat magic as something to be channeled through props, wands, broomsticks, cauldrons. But true magic begins and ends with blood and intent. He traced a symbol on the table with his bloodied finger, and the mark glowed briefly before sinking into the wood, leaving no trace. What was that? Harry asked, fascinated despite his initial unease. A simple illumination charm, the same principle behind your Lumos spell, but without the crutch of a wand or an incantation. Gomez grinned. The blood provides the connection to your magic, and your intent shapes it to your will. But isn't blood magic, dark? Harry ventured, remembering comments about dark wizards from the previous evening's conversations. Dark. Light. Gomez waved his hands dismissively. Political constructs, my boy. Magic simply is. The British ministry classifies blood magic as dark, because it's powerful and difficult to regulate. Can't have the common wizard realizing he doesn't need their approved education or registered wand, can they? Harry considered this perspective, so different from the hints of wizarding society he'd gleaned so far. Will I learn both kinds? This older magic and the wand magic they teach at Hogwarts. But of course. Gomez clapped him on the shoulder. The Addams philosophy has always been, learn everything, question everything, and never let someone else's limitations become your own. By the time you receive your Hogwarts letter, you'll have a foundation in magical theory that most adult wizards never achieve. The next several hours passed in a blur of fascinating information. Gomez proved to be a surprisingly patient teacher, explaining complex concepts in ways Harry could understand, never showing frustration when Harry asked questions, and seeming genuinely delighted by his curiosity. They covered the basic principles of magical theory, the relationship between intent and effect, the role of symbolic representations, the importance of precision in ritual work, without attempting any actual spellcasting yet. Gomez explained that magical education traditionally began with theory to prevent accidental magic from becoming destructive as a child's power matured. Your accidental magic at the Dursleys, he explained, was your innate power responding to emotional triggers, primarily fear and anger, I'd wager. Harry nodded, remembering instances of strange occurrences when he'd been particularly upset, ending up on the school roof when running from Dudley, turning his teacher's wig blue, growing back his hair overnight after a particularly horrible haircut from Aunt Petunia. As you learn to direct that power consciously, Gomez continued, those involuntary outbursts will diminish. But the raw potential remains. The trick is channeling it purposefully rather than suppressing it, as the British educational system tends to do. By lunchtime, Harry's head was swimming with new information, but he felt more excited than overwhelmed. For the first time, the strange occurrences in his life made sense as part of a larger pattern, not as freakish anomalies to be punished and hidden. You've the makings of a fine scholar, Gomez declared as they prepared to leave the library. Ask the right questions, that's the key. Any fool can memorize incantations, but understanding why they work, that's where true mastery begins. Lunch was served in a sunroom that seemed at odds with the Gothic atmosphere of the rest of the mansion, until Harry realized the plants crowding the space were all carnivorous varieties, currently being fed by Morticia with what looked disturbingly like raw meat. How was your morning, dear? She asked Harry as he took a seat at the small table where Wednesday and Pugsley were already eating what appeared to be normal sandwiches. Fascinating, Harry replied honestly. Mr. Addams, Gomez, was teaching me about magical theory. Gomez, please, the man corrected, twirling his mustache. Mr. Addams was my father, and he seldom answered to it unless you added your dreadfulness at the end. The boy's a natural, Tish. Gomez continued enthusiastically. Asks the right questions, sees connections quickly. With that kind of analytical mind, he'll excel at ritual design. Wonderful. Morticia smiled at Harry. After lunch, I thought I'd show Harry the greenhouse before Grandmama begins her examination. Excellent idea. The deadly nightshade is particularly vigorous this year. And the venomous tentacula has been positively murderous. Gomez sounded delighted by this fact. Harry picked up his sandwich cautiously, having learned to be wary of Addams' family cuisine, but it appeared to be normal chicken with some kind of herb spread. He took a bite and found it delicious. Don't worry, Wednesday said, noticing his hesitation. Lunch is always non-toxic. Grandmama saves her experimental cooking for dinner. That's reassuring, Harry replied, not entirely sure it was. Speaking of reassurance, Morticia interjected smoothly, we received a message from Gringotts this morning. The Goblins have begun a full audit of your accounts and have already recovered several artifacts that were removed without authorization from your family vault. Artifacts? Like what? Harry asked. Family grimoires, primarily. Books of Potter family magic passed down through generations. Morticia's expression darkened slightly. Someone apparently didn't want you to have access to your heritage. Dumbledore, Wednesday stated flatly, her dark eyes flashing with unusual animation. The logical suspect, given his unauthorized withdrawals. Indeed, Morticia agreed. The Goblins are being discreet for now, but they've frozen all access to your vaults except through your new Guardian designation. That'll put the cauldron on the fire. Gomez chuckled. Nothing like cutting off a wizard's access to gold to get his attention. I'd wager old Dumbledore is already searching frantically for his missing cash cow. Harry frowned. But why would he take money from my vaults in the first place? He's supposed to be a respected wizard, isn't he? The adults exchanged glances. Power corrupts, Harry, Morticia said gently. And Albus Dumbledore has held many forms of power for a very long time. As to his specific motives regarding you, that remains to be discovered. The important thing, Gomez added, is that you're safe now, and the Goblins are untangling the financial web. Nasty business, unauthorized guardianship. Makes one almost sympathetic to the Goblin rebellions. After lunch, Morticia led Harry to the greenhouse, a massive glass structure attached to the east wing of the mansion. Unlike the carefully manicured gardens Harry had glimpsed from his bedroom window, the greenhouse was a jungle of magical and mundane plants, all sharing one common trait, danger. Herbology has always been my passion, Morticia explained as they walked between rows of plants that seemed to follow their movement. There's something so elegant about flora that bites back. Harry kept his hands carefully at his sides, noting how several vines seemed to reach hopefully toward him when he passed. This is my pride and joy, Audrey 3. Morticia stopped before an enormous plant with a bulbous head and wickedly toothed maw. Granddaughter of the famous Audrey that caused such a delightful commotion in that Muggle neighborhood some years back. The Ministry tried to classify her as a beast rather than a being, but we won on appeal. The plant preened at Morticia's praise, its massive head bobbing in what Harry could only interpret as pleasure. She's impressive, Harry offered cautiously. She is, isn't she? Watch this. Morticia produced what looked like a steak from a nearby feeding bucket and tossed it toward the plant, which snapped it out of the air with terrifying speed. Reflexes of a striking serpent. I've been crossbreeding her with venomous tentacula to enhance her hunting abilities. Harry made a mental note to stay well out of striking distance. Do all magical families keep greenhouses like this? Certainly not, Morticia replied, sounding faintly amused. Most magical families in Britain maintain traditional herb gardens, wolfsbane, dittany, fluxweed, the usual potion ingredients. Nothing that might eat the gardener. Seems like a missed opportunity, Harry commented without thinking. Morticia's face lit up with a rare, genuine smile. Exactly what I've always said. Gomez is right, you do have the Addams perspective. They continued the tour, with Morticia pointing out particularly interesting specimens and explaining their properties and uses. Despite the inherent danger of the plants, Harry found himself fascinated. Morticia's knowledge was encyclopedic, and her affection for her lethal garden was oddly endearing. These will be particularly relevant to your Hogwarts education, she explained, indicating a section of more conventional magical plants. Herbology is a core subject, though I find their curriculum rather tame. Professor Sprout refuses to cultivate anything above Class 4 on the danger scale. What's the danger scale for these? Harry asked, gesturing to the more exotic specimens. Oh, most of these haven't been officially classified, Morticia replied airily. The Department for the Regulation and Control of Magical Plants gave up trying to inspect our greenhouse after the third examiner disappeared. Harry decided not to ask for clarification on that point. As they neared the end of the tour, Morticia led him to a small workstation where various plant parts were being dried or processed. I prepare many of the family's potion ingredients myself, she explained. Commercial suppliers often mishandle the more sensitive components. Properly harvested with love and respect, even the deadliest plants yield more potent results. She selected a small vial of pale green liquid from a rack. This essence of belladonna, for example. Harvested at midnight under the new moon, processed with silver tools, stored in crystal. 10 times more effective than what you'd purchase in Diagon Alley. Is potion making difficult? Harry asked, genuinely curious. Like all magical disciplines, it requires precision and respect for the craft. Morticia considered him thoughtfully. You have your mother's eyes, you know. Lily Potter was known for her exceptional potion work, among other talents. Harry's attention sharpened. You mentioned that before. Did you know more about her? Only by reputation, Morticia admitted. But the magical world keeps records. After dinner, we could visit the family archive room. The Addamses have maintained subscriptions to various magical publications for centuries, including those from the time your parents were active in magical society. I'd like that, Harry said quietly. The Dursleys never told me anything about them, except lies. Morticia's expression softened. Family is everything to the Addamses, Harry. We'll help you reclaim your heritage, both Potter and Evans. Their conversation was interrupted by Lurch, who appeared silently at the greenhouse entrance and announced in his sepulchral voice, Madam. Grandmama is ready for the boy. Thank you, Lurch, Morticia replied. Tell Mother we'll be there shortly. Turning to Harry, she added, Grandmama can be somewhat intense in her methods, but she's remarkably skilled. If anyone can determine what magic lingers in your scar, it's her. Harry nodded, unconsciously touching the lightning bolt mark on his forehead. Gomez mentioned something about soul magic last night. Is that what she thinks it might be? Morticia hesitated, choosing her words carefully. There are certain dark practices that involve fragmenting one's soul. If, and I stress if, your scar contains such a fragment, it would explain much about your connection to Voldemort and the unusual properties the goblins detected. A piece of Voldemort's soul. In me? Harry felt suddenly ill. It's only a theory at this point, Morticia assured him. Which is why Grandmama's examination is so important. But whatever she finds, Harry, remember this, you are not defined by what was done to you, but by how you respond to it. With those words of comfort, Morticia led Harry back into the mansion and down a winding staircase to what appeared to be a dungeon converted into a potions laboratory. Cauldrons of various sizes bubbled over magical fires, their contents emitting multicolored vapors that twisted into fantastical shapes before dissipating. Shelves lined the walls, crowded with ingredients both recognizable and alien, jars of herbs, vials of liquids in impossible colors, containers of substances that moved of their own accord, and several that Harry was fairly certain contained body parts of various creatures. Grandmama stood at a central workbench, grinding something with a mortar and pestle while consulting an ancient tome bound in what looked suspiciously like human skin. She looked up as they entered, her wild white hair even more disheveled than usual, stained with various potions' ingredients. "There you are," she cackled. "Right on time. The stars are perfectly aligned for diagnostic work today. Mars in retrograde, Venus ascending, excellent for uncovering hidden curses." "I'll leave you in Mother's capable hands," Morticia told Harry. "I need to feed the more temperamental specimens in the conservatory. They get testy if their afternoon meal is delayed." After Morticia glided away, Grandmama gestured Harry toward a chair positioned beneath a complex arrangement of crystals suspended from the ceiling. "Sit, sit. Nothing to fear. Just a little magical checkup," she assured him, though her gleeful expression didn't exactly inspire confidence. Harry sat gingerly, watching as Grandmama bustled around gathering various implements, a silver knife, several vials, a bowl of what appeared to be water but with an oily, rainbow sheen on its surface. "Now then," she said, positioning herself before him. "First things first, a drop of blood to establish the magical baseline." She held out the silver knife expectantly. When Harry hesitated, she cackled again. "Just a tiny prick, boy. Basic magical diagnostics always start with blood. Shows your magical signature, any inherited abilities, lingering curses, that sort of thing." Gathering his courage, Harry extended his hand. Grandmama's movements were surprisingly gentle as she pricked his finger and collected a single drop of blood in a crystal vial. "Good lad," she approved. "Now, let's see what secrets you're hiding." She added the blood to the rainbow-sheened water, which immediately began to swirl with colors, predominantly gold and green, with threads of other hues dancing through the mixture. Strong magical core," as expected, Grandmama muttered, leaning close to examine the patterns. "Definite affinity for defensive magic, interesting connection to serpent magic, beyond just the Parseltongue, and, A streak of oily black had appeared in the mixture, seeming to fight against the golden light that tried to contain it. "Just as I suspected," Grandmama said grimly. "Foreign magic, bound to your scar. Now to determine exactly what we're dealing with." What followed was an hour of increasingly esoteric tests. Grandmama waved crystals over Harry's scar, had him drink potions that tasted progressively more vile, chanted in languages that made Harry's ears hurt, and at one point had him sit inside a circle of what she claimed were powdered bones of an unrepentant oathbreaker, excellent for revealing magical deception. Throughout it all, Harry did his best to comply without complaint, though some of the tests left him feeling dizzy or nauseated. Grandmama seemed oblivious to his discomfort, muttering to herself and scribbling notes with a quill that appeared to be writing in blood rather than ink. Finally, she stepped back, her expression unusually serious. "Well?" Harry asked anxiously. "What is it?" "A soul fragment," Grandmama confirmed, her normally cheerful macabre manner subdued. "Just as we feared. When Voldemort tried to kill you, something went wrong with his magic. A piece of his soul splintered off and attached itself to you, the only living thing present after the killing curse rebounded." Harry felt his stomach lurch. "So I have Voldemort, inside me?" "Not precisely," Grandmama corrected. "You have a fragment of his soul attached to yours, like a parasite, not a possession. It's dormant most of the time, from what I can tell, but it's likely the source of your Parseltongue ability and possibly other effects we haven't yet identified." "Can you remove it?" Harry asked, trying to keep the desperation from his voice. Grandmama's eyes gleamed with the light of a challenge accepted. "Oh yes. But it won't be simple or pleasant. Soul magic is complex, dangerous work. We'll need a proper ritual, specific astronomical conditions, and ingredients that aren't exactly Ministry approved." "I don't care what it takes," Harry said firmly. "I don't want a piece of the person who murdered my parents living in my head." Spoken like a true Addams. Grandmama cackled, her good humor returning. "We'll begin preparations immediately. The next dark moon is in 2 weeks, perfect timing for a soul exorcism." Harry wasn't entirely reassured by her enthusiasm, but the prospect of being free from Voldemort's soul fragment gave him hope. "What do I need to do to prepare?" Leave that to me and Morticia, Grandmama replied, already turning to her shelves and pulling down various ingredients. Though there is one element you could help with. The ritual will require something that belonged to your mother, a physical anchor for her sacrificial protection, which we'll use to drive out the foreign soul while preserving yours. But I don't have anything of my mother's, Harry said, his hope faltering. Ah, but the goblins do, Grandmama reminded him. They've already recovered several Potter family heirlooms from unauthorized holders. I'll send a raven to Gringotts immediately with a specific request. As Grandmama began writing a note on parchment so ancient it crackled beneath her quill, Harry contemplated the revelation about his scar. The idea of carrying a piece of Voldemort was revolting, but strangely, having an explanation for his connection to the Dark Lord was almost a relief. It wasn't some inherent darkness within him, as he'd sometimes feared during his years with the Dursleys, it was an invader, something that could be removed. There. Grandmama sealed her note with wax and a drop of her own blood. Ragnarok will understand the urgency. Now, I believe you have a poison recognition lesson scheduled with Wednesday. Best not to keep her waiting, she takes her poisons very seriously. Harry left the dungeon laboratory feeling oddly lighter despite the disturbing news. As he climbed the stairs back to the main floor, he found Wednesday waiting for him, a wooden case tucked under one arm. Grandmama confirmed it was a soul fragment, didn't she? Wednesday asked without preamble. Harry nodded, unsurprised by her perception. She's planning a ritual for the Dark Moon. Good. I'll help gather ingredients. Wednesday's expression remained impassive, but Harry thought he detected a hint of anticipation in her voice. Soul magic is fascinating. Most modern wizards are too squeamish to study it properly. You don't think it's evil? Harry asked hesitantly. Evil is subjective, Wednesday replied with a shrug. Fragmenting one's own soul is certainly foolish, it destabilizes your magical core and eventually leads to madness. But studying how it works. That's just knowledge. She led him to a small study where the wooden case was laid open on a table, revealing rows of tiny vials containing liquids of various colors. My personal collection, she explained. 47 distinct poisons, each with unique properties and antidotes. By the time you go to Hogwarts, you should be able to identify each by sight, smell, and effect. Effect? Harry repeated nervously. We're not going to test them, are we? The ghost of a smile crossed Wednesday's face. Not at full potency. But diluted samples on the skin can produce diagnostic reactions without permanent damage. The next hour proved surprisingly educational, if somewhat unnerving. Wednesday was a methodical teacher, explaining the properties of each poison with clinical precision. She demonstrated how to identify poisons through various tests, changes in color when exposed to certain reagents, reactions with different metals, even the patterns they formed when dropped onto still water. This one, she explained, holding up a vial of innocent-looking clear liquid, is distilled from the venom of the inland taipan. Undetectable in food or drink, it causes paralysis within minutes but keeps the victim conscious and aware throughout their suffering. That's horrifying, Harry said honestly. Yes, Wednesday agreed with what sounded like approval. But knowing it exists might save your life someday. Especially once you return to British Wizarding Society as Harry Potter, Boy Who Lived. Harry blinked at the title. Is that what they call me? Among other things, Wednesday confirmed. You're something of a legend for surviving the killing curse. When you reappear after years of supposed seclusion, you'll be a target for those who served Voldemort, and possibly for those who claim to oppose him but have their own agendas. The matter-of-fact way she described the danger was somehow less frightening than if she tried to soften it. So I need to learn about poisons to protect myself. To protect yourself, to identify potential threats, and because knowledge is power. Wednesday carefully returned the vial to its place in the case. The Addams philosophy has always been to understand the darkness rather than fear it. Only then can you truly defend against it, or use it when necessary. Harry considered this perspective, so different from what he suspected the proper wizarding world would teach. The Addams way does seem more practical. We've survived centuries of witch hunts, magical wars, and ministry persecution, Wednesday pointed out. Practicality has its advantages. As they concluded the lesson, a distant gong echoed through the mansion. Dinner, Wednesday explained, closing her poison case. We should wash thoroughly first. Some residue might remain on our hands. Dinner with the Addamses proved to be another adventure in culinary courage. The main course was something Grandmama called Swamp Thing Surprise, which appeared to be some kind of stew containing ingredients Harry decided not to inquire about too closely. To his relief, it tasted better than it looked, rich and savory with an unusual but not unpleasant spice blend. Conversation flowed around the table, with Gomez regaling them with tales of his adventures in magical Morocco, where he claimed to have wrestled a sphinx to a draw in a riddle contest. Pugsley enthusiastically described his latest explosive experiment, which had apparently resulted in a small crater in the East Garden and the temporary relocation of several garden gnomes, which, Harry was disturbed to learn, were actually small, sentient creatures rather than the ceramic ornaments the Dursleys sometimes displayed. After dinner, true to her promise, Morticia led Harry to the archive room, a smaller chamber adjoining the main library, where bound volumes of newspapers and magazines were preserved in glass-fronted cabinets. The British magical newspapers from the late 1970s should be in this section, Morticia explained, opening a cabinet and carefully extracting several bound volumes. This would cover the period when your parents were most active in the resistance against Voldemort. Harry's heart quickened as Morticia laid the volumes on a reading table and opened the first to reveal yellowed pages of the Daily Prophet, the wizarding newspaper Gomez had been reading at breakfast. Here, Morticia said softly, pointing to a photograph accompanying an article. I believe this is them. Harry leaned forward eagerly, drinking in the sight of a young couple standing with a group of people identified as members of the Order of the Phoenix following successful defense against Death Eater attack in Hogsmeade. His father was tall and lean, with the same unruly black hair that Harry had inherited, though James Potter wore glasses with round frames rather than the square ones Harry had been given. He stood with one arm around a beautiful young woman with flowing dark red hair and, Harry's breath caught, eyes exactly like his own. They look so happy, he whispered, watching as the magical photograph showed his father saying something that made his mother laugh, her whole face lighting up with a smile. They were well matched, Morticia observed. According to these articles, your father came from an old pure-blood family but rejected the prejudices many such families maintained. Your mother was Muggle-born but reportedly one of the most talented witches of her generation. They spent the next 2 hours poring over the archives, finding every mention of the Potters they could. The picture that emerged was of a brave, principled couple who had stood against Voldemort despite the danger, who had been respected for their magical skill and their unwavering commitment to fighting darkness. They defied him 3 times, Harry read from one article, his finger tracing the lines of text. What does that mean? In magical terms, to defy a powerful dark wizard means to directly oppose them and survive, Morticia explained. It's significant because each confrontation with such darkness leaves a magical mark. To survive 3 such encounters speaks to both skill and powerful protective magic. Harry continued reading, absorbing everything he could about his parents. They had met at Hogwarts, both been in Gryffindor House, excelled in defense against the dark arts, and joined the resistance immediately after graduating. His father had been an Auror, a dark wizard catcher, while his mother had specialized in charms research, with a focus on protective magic. This explains much about how you survived, Morticia commented, indicating an interview with a wizard identified as Unspeakable F, Department of Mysteries, who theorized that Lily Potter's expertise in protective charms might have contributed to her son's survival. She didn't just die for me, Harry realized, his throat tight with emotion. She prepared for it, researched protection that would activate if she sacrificed herself. A mother's love combined with brilliant magical innovation, Morticia agreed softly. Truly formidable magic. They eventually reached the editions covering Halloween 1981, the night Voldemort had attacked Godric's Hollow and killed Harry's parents. The headlines screamed, "You know WHO defeated," and "Boy WHO lives survives killing curse." The articles were filled with speculation, celebration, and contradictory reports about what had actually happened. Curious, Morticia murmured, scanning the text. According to this, Albus Dumbledore arrived at the scene shortly after the attack, confirmed the deaths of your parents and the apparent destruction of Voldemort, and then personally arranged for your placement in a secure location with surviving family. He took me to the Dursleys, Harry said bitterly. And then started stealing from my vaults. Indeed. Morticia's expression was thoughtful. And he was the first on the scene, before the Ministry authorities. One wonders what else he might have taken besides you. What do you mean? Harry asked. Your parents' wands, for instance. Family grimoires. Magical artifacts. The Potter family was ancient and wealthy, your home would have contained many valuable magical items. Morticia carefully turned a page. Items that never made it into the official inventory of recovered possessions. Harry felt a surge of anger at this new potential theft. Can the goblins recover those too? They're already trying, Morticia assured him. The audit of your accounts includes a thorough investigation into all Potter assets. If items were misappropriated, Ragnarok will find them. As they continued reading, Harry noticed something odd about the coverage. There's nothing here about how Voldemort found my parents. Weren't they in hiding? According to this, Morticia said, indicating another article, the Potters were under a Fidelius charm, a powerful concealment spell that hides a location in the soul of a designated secret keeper. The only way Voldemort could have found them was if this secret keeper betrayed them. Who was it? Harry asked, anger flaring again. Morticia frowned. That's peculiar. The articles mention a Sirius Black being arrested for the betrayal and for the murder of another friend, Peter Pettigrew, along with 12 Muggles. But there's no mention of a trial or testimony under Veritaserum, which would be standard procedure for such a serious crime. So this Sirius Black person betrayed my parents to Voldemort? Harry's hands clenched into fists. Perhaps, Morticia said carefully. But the lack of trial details is concerning. In the chaos following Voldemort's fall, it's possible proper judicial procedures were overlooked. She made a note on a piece of parchment. I'll have Gomez look into this. He maintains certain connections in legal circles that might prove useful. By the time they finished reviewing the archives, Harry's emotions were a complex mix of pride in his parents' courage, grief for their loss, anger at their betrayal, and determination to reclaim his heritage. The Potters had been heroes who died protecting their son and fighting against a terrible evil. The least Harry could do was live up to their legacy. Thank you, he said to Morticia as they carefully returned the volumes to their cabinets. For showing me this. For letting me know who they really were. Family history should never be lost or forgotten, Morticia replied simply. The Addamses understand this better than most. Our ancestors remain part of us, guiding our paths even from beyond the veil. As if to emphasize her point, one of the portraits they passed on their way back to the main part of the house, a particularly grim-looking gentleman in Victorian attire, called out, "Well said, Morticia. The boy has good blood in him, despite the unfortunate lack of pallor." Harry grinned despite himself. The Addams ancestors were certainly more entertaining than the Dursleys had ever been. The following days fell into a routine that, while utterly unlike anything Harry could have imagined at Privet Drive, quickly began to feel normal. Mornings were devoted to magical theory with Gomez, who supplemented traditional lessons with wild demonstrations that occasionally resulted in minor explosions or temporarily misplaced limbs. Afternoons were split between Morticia's lessons in magical herbology and potion ingredients, Grandmama's instruction in basic brewing techniques, and Wednesday and Pugsley's unique approach to practical education. The Addams children proved to be surprisingly good teachers in their areas of expertise. Wednesday's methodical mind was perfect for potion work and the identification of magical plants and creatures, while Pugsley's enthusiasm for anything that exploded made him an excellent guide to the more volatile aspects of magic. The trick to surviving a blasting curse, Pugsley explained during one memorable lesson in the mansion's expansive grounds, is to dive away at a 45-degree angle. Most people go straight back or to the side, but the blast radius expands in an egg shape, not a circle. That's actually really useful, Harry admitted, impressed by Pugsley's practical knowledge despite his haphazard approach to safety. Learned it the hard way, Pugsley confided, showing Harry a scar on his arm. Got too close to Uncle Fester's experimental wand core. Blast threw me 30 feet. It was awesome. Harry had yet to meet the mysterious Uncle Fester, who was apparently traveling in Transylvania, studying with local vampires on what Gomez described as a sabbatical to refresh his understanding of throat anatomy. 5 days into his stay with the Addams family, Harry received his first correspondence from Gringotts, a thick envelope delivered by a raven rather than an owl, bearing the bank's official seal. Ah! News from our goblin friends. Gomez announced at breakfast as the raven dropped the envelope beside Harry's plate. Go ahead, my boy. Family business should be attended to promptly. Harry carefully broke the seal and removed several parchments covered in the bank's official letterhead. It's from Ragnarok, he said, scanning the first page. He says they've completed the initial audit of my accounts and have some significant findings. Well, don't keep us in suspense. Grandmama urged, leaning forward eagerly. Harry continued reading aloud. Our investigation has revealed systematic withdrawals from your trust vault over the past 6 years, totaling 50,000 galleons. These withdrawals were authorized by Albus Dumbledore in his capacity as your magical guardian, with the stated purpose of care and maintenance of the Potter heir. Given your actual living conditions, we have classified these withdrawals as fraudulent and have frozen an equivalent amount in Dumbledore's personal accounts pending resolution. 50,000 galleons. Gomez whistled. A small fortune. And not a canute made it to your actual care, I'd wager. There's more, Harry said, turning to the next page. They've also identified regular payments from my family vault to something called the Order of the Phoenix Operating Fund, and to an account belonging to Vernon and Petunia Dursley. A shocked silence fell over the table. Even the normally unflappable Morticia looked genuinely angry. They were being paid. Harry finally managed, his voice tight with betrayal. All those years they complained about the burden of taking me in, how expensive I was to feed and clothe, they were being paid to keep me. £500 monthly, Harry read, his hands shaking slightly with suppressed rage. Deposited directly to a special account at Barclays Bank, converted from galleons by the Goblin Exchange Service. Those loathsome, hypocritical parasites, Morticia said softly, her voice all the more chilling for its quietness. To treat a child so cruelly while profiting from his presence. Gomez's normally jovial face had darkened to something genuinely menacing. The Dursleys will answer for this, Harry. The Addams family does not forgive those who prey upon children, especially not our children. The casual inclusion of Harry in our children warmed something in his chest despite his anger at the Dursleys' betrayal. What will happen to them? He asked, not sure whether he wanted vengeance or simply justice. The Goblins have already suspended the payments, Harry continued reading. And they're preparing a case for restitution of all funds previously disbursed, with interest. Excellent start, Wednesday commented, her dark eyes gleaming. Financial ruin has a certain elegant cruelty to it. Indeed, Morticia agreed. Though I think a more personal touch might also be appropriate. The Addams special. Pugsley suggested eagerly. You know, perhaps we should finish reviewing the Goblins' findings before planning retribution, Morticia interjected smoothly. Harry nodded and returned to the letter. Ragnarok says they've also recovered several items from Dumbledore's possession that belong to the Potter estate, including my parents' wands, several family grimoires, and, he paused, his voice catching. And my mother's jewelry box, still containing her wedding ring and a locket with photos of my parents and me as a baby. Perfect. Grandmama exclaimed. The ring will be ideal for the soul fragment extraction ritual. Wedding rings carry powerful emotional magic, especially from a marriage of true affection. Ragnarok writes that they've placed the recovered items in a special vault for my use, accessible through my Addams guardians, Harry concluded. He also says that Dumbledore has made several attempts to contact the bank regarding my whereabouts, but they've maintained confidentiality as per our agreement. The old wizard's getting desperate, Gomez chuckled. Nothing rattles a puppet master like losing control of his favorite marionette. We should visit Gringotts soon to collect your mother's ring, Morticia suggested. The dark moon is only 9 days away, and Grandmama will need time to prepare it for the ritual. Can we go today? Harry asked eagerly, both for the ritual preparation and for the chance to see his mother's possessions. An excellent idea, Gomez agreed. I've been meaning to check on some investments anyway. Nothing like a good global financial crisis to create buying opportunities. The visit to Gringotts was arranged for that afternoon, with Gomez, Morticia, and Harry traveling via the Floo network, a form of magical transportation involving fireplaces that Harry found disorienting but vastly preferable to the portkey. They arrived in a private reception area within the bank, where Griphook was waiting to escort them to Ragnarok's office. Mr. Potter, Lord and Lady Addams, the goblin greeted them with a formal bow. Director Ragnarok is looking forward to your visit. There have been developments since our letter was sent. The ominous way Griphook emphasized developments sent a shiver of apprehension down Harry's spine. What else could have gone wrong? Ragnarok's office was as imposing as Harry remembered, the ancient goblin seated behind his massive desk with an array of documents spread before him. But today, there was another goblin present, a female, judging by the more delicate features and the intricate gold jewelry adorning her ears and fingers. Mr. Potter, Lord and Lady Addams, Ragnarok greeted them. Allow me to introduce Silverax, our chief cursebreaker and artifact specialist. She has been examining the items recovered from your family vaults. The female goblin inclined her head in acknowledgement. The Potter artifacts present several, concerning features that warrant discussion. Once they were seated, Ragnarok got directly to business. Since our communication this morning, we have made 2 significant discoveries. First, Albus Dumbledore has petitioned the Wizengamot, the Wizarding High Court, for an emergency hearing regarding your guardianship, Mr. Potter. He claims you have been kidnapped by dark wizards and are in immediate danger. That's preposterous. Gomez exclaimed. The guardianship transfer was completely legal under Goblin banking law. Indeed it was, Ragnarok agreed with a sharp-toothed smile. Which is why the Wizengamot has limited jurisdiction in this matter. However, Dumbledore wields considerable influence. He may attempt to use ministry forces to locate you. Can he do that? Harry asked anxiously. Force me to go back? Not legally, Morticia assured him. The blood-signed guardianship takes precedence over ministry regulations due to ancient treaties with the Goblin nation. However, wizarding politics often overlook such niceties when convenient. Precisely, Ragnarok confirmed. Which brings us to our second discovery. He nodded to Silverax, who opened a ornate wooden box on the desk. This locket was among the items recovered from Dumbledore's office, she explained, using a silver instrument to lift what appeared to be an antique gold locket engraved with an ornate S formed from emeralds. It bears the mark of Salazar Slytherin and is, by all rights, a priceless historical artifact that should be in a museum or the Slytherin family vault. What's it doing with my family's possessions? Harry asked, confused. That, Silverax said grimly, is the concerning part. This locket contains the same type of dark magic we detected in your scar, Mr. Potter. A soul fragment. A stunned silence fell over the room. Another one? Harry finally managed. Voldemort put pieces of his soul in things? On purpose? It appears so, Ragnarok confirmed. Which suggests a most disturbing possibility, that the Dark Lord created multiple such vessels deliberately, as a form of immortality. A Horcrux, Morticia whispered, her normally composed features showing genuine shock. He created Horcruxes. You're familiar with the term, Lady Addams? Silverax asked, eyebrows raised. The Addams library contains many ancient texts, Morticia replied carefully. Including those documenting the darkest forms of magic, not for practice, but for understanding and defense. Then you comprehend the gravity of this discovery, Ragnarok said. If Voldemort created multiple Horcruxes, he cannot truly die until all are destroyed. And I'm one of them, Harry said quietly, the full horror of the situation sinking in. That's why he didn't die that night, part of him was in me. And in this locket. You are not a Horcrux in the traditional sense, Silverax clarified. A true Horcrux requires a specific ritual and preparation. The fragment in your scar appears to have attached accidentally, likely a result of an already unstable soul fragmenting further during the violent magical backlash of the failed killing curse. Can you destroy it? Gomez asked, his usual exuberance completely absent. The locket, I mean. Possibly, Silverax replied. Horcruxes can only be destroyed by means that damage the vessel beyond magical repair, fiend fire, basilisk venom, certain goblin-forged weapons imbued with appropriate destructive substances. And what about the fragment in Harry? Morticia asked, her hand moving protectively to Harry's shoulder. That presents a unique challenge, Ragnarok admitted. Traditional methods would destroy the vessel, in this case, Mr. Potter himself. Unacceptable, Gomez stated flatly. Quite, Ragnarok agreed. Which is why we found Lady Addams's mother's proposal for a soul extraction ritual most intriguing. Goblin magic approaches soul binding differently than wizard magic. We believe a combination of our techniques with your family's older magical traditions might succeed where either alone would fail. A collaboration? Morticia looked intrigued by the possibility. Mother would be fascinated. We propose that the ritual be conducted at Gringotts, in our oldest ritual chamber, Ragnarok continued. With both Goblin and Addams magic workers participating. The protections there are beyond anything available elsewhere, and would contain any unexpected reactions. Harry glanced between the Goblins and the Addamses, feeling both terrified and hopeful. So you think it could work? You could get this thing out of me without killing me? We believe so, Silverax confirmed. The fact that the soul fragment attached accidentally rather than through proper ritual makes it more vulnerable to extraction. And your mother's protective magic, which still lingers in your blood, provides a powerful ally in the process. Speaking of which, Ragnarok added, opening another box, here is the item you requested, Lily Potter's wedding ring. Harry leaned forward eagerly as Ragnarok revealed a delicate gold band set with a small ruby and inscribed with tiny runes around its circumference. May I? He asked hesitantly. Of course, Ragnarok pushed the box toward him. It is your family's property, after all. With trembling fingers, Harry lifted the ring, feeling a strange warmth emanate from the metal as he held it up to examine the intricate runic inscriptions. Love beyond death, Morticia translated softly. A powerful sentiment, and most appropriate for our purposes. The enchantments on this ring are remarkably sophisticated, Silverax observed. Your mother was a talented witch, Mr. Potter. These are protective charms of her own design, woven into a traditional form but enhanced with innovations I've not seen documented elsewhere. Pride swelled in Harry's chest. His mother hadn't just been brave, she'd been brilliant, creating new magic that even goblin experts found impressive. Will it help with the ritual? He asked. Immeasurably, Morticia assured him. A personal item imbued with her protective magic and her love for you creates the perfect anchor to ensure your soul remains intact while the fragment is extracted. Then I think we should accept the goblin's offer, Harry said decisively. If combining our approaches gives the best chance of success, that's what we should do. Gomez beamed, clapping Harry on the shoulder. Well said, my boy. The Addams Goblin Alliance against soul-splitting dark wizards begins. Arrangements were quickly made for the ritual to take place at Gringotts during the dark moon, with Grandmama to work closely with the goblin ritual masters on the preparatory steps. Harry was also granted access to the special vault containing his recovered family possessions, which proved to be a bittersweet experience. The vault wasn't large by Gringotts standards, but it contained treasures beyond measure to Harry: his father's wand of mahogany, his mother's willow wand, photo albums documenting their years at Hogwarts and their early marriage, books annotated in his mother's neat handwriting, his father's collection of Quidditch memorabilia, and the jewelry box containing his mother's most personal items. They were real people, Harry said softly as he leafed through a photo album showing his parents laughing with friends, dancing at their wedding, holding baby Harry with expressions of absolute adoration. Not just heroes or victims, real people with lives and friends and hobbies. All the best heroes are, Gomez said, uncharacteristically gentle. That's what makes their sacrifices meaningful. Harry selected several items to take with him: the photo album, both his parents' wands, though he was advised not to attempt using them until he was older, and the locket containing the family photos. The ring, of course, would be needed for the ritual. The goblins will maintain the vault's security, Morticia assured him as they prepared to leave. When you're ready, we can return for more of your heritage. As they made their way back through Gringotts marble halls, Harry found himself feeling more connected to his parents than ever before. They had been brave, yes, but also brilliant, loving, and real. And soon, with the help of his new family and their goblin allies, he would be freed from the last taint of the wizard who had taken them from him. The thought gave him strength for what lay ahead. The days leading up to the ritual were filled with intense preparation. Grandmama practically lived in her laboratory, brewing complex potions and consulting with the goblin ritual masters via a special communication mirror. Morticia spent hours preparing Harry's mother's ring, subjecting it to purification processes involving everything from moonlight immersion to ritual cleansing with rare herbs. Harry's education continued, but with a new focus on meditation and mental discipline, skills Morticia explained would be essential during the ritual. The extraction process will target the foreign soul fragment, she told him during one such lesson in the conservatory, where they sat cross-legged amidst carnivorous plants that seemed oddly subdued by their meditation. But there may be moments when the fragment fights back. Your ability to distinguish between your own thoughts and its influence could be crucial. How will I know the difference? Harry asked, struggling to maintain the focused breathing pattern Morticia had demonstrated. Intrusions will feel alien, thoughts or emotions that arise suddenly and don't align with your true self. Morticia's voice remained calm and hypnotic. They may appeal to fear, anger, or pride, the darker emotions that such fragments feed upon. Harry thought about the nightmares he sometimes had, where he heard a high, cold laugh and saw a flash of green light. Had those been his own trauma, or the fragment's memories? The idea was disturbing. What if I can't tell the difference? He asked anxiously. That's why we practice now, Morticia explained. And why the ritual will include anchors to your true self, your mother's ring, the presence of those who care for you, the goblin's magic which recognizes rightful ownership of soul essence. These reassurances helped, but Harry still found himself growing more nervous as the dark moon approached. What if something went wrong? What if the fragment couldn't be removed without hurting him? What if there were other fragments out there, meaning Voldemort could still return? Surprisingly, it was Wednesday who provided the most effective comfort. The evening before they were to depart for Gringotts, she sought Harry out in his room, where he was sitting on the window seat, watching storm clouds gather over the family graveyard. "You're afraid," she stated, not a question but a simple observation as she sat beside him. Harry nodded, seeing no point in denying it to someone as perceptive as Wednesday. "Wouldn't you be?" "Yes," she replied candidly. "Fear is a rational response to soul magic. Even we Addamses approach it with caution." Her honesty was oddly reassuring. "Does that mean it might not work?" "It means it's serious magic," Wednesday clarified. "But you have advantages most don't." "Like what?" "The fragment attached accidentally, not through proper ritual. It's had less time to integrate with your soul. You have strong protective magic from your mother." She listed these points matter-of-factly. "And you have us. The Addams family specializes in darkness, she continued. Not evil, darkness. The shadows other wizards fear to explore. We understand what we're facing better than most. Harry considered her words. It was true that the Addamses approached the macabre with a familiarity that would terrify most people, but that very comfort with darkness might be exactly what was needed against Voldemort's soul magic. Thank you, he said simply. Wednesday nodded, then reached into her pocket and withdrew a small object, a pendant on a silver chain. This is for you. For the ritual. Harry accepted it curiously. The pendant was silver, shaped like a raven with obsidian eyes and outstretched wings. Family protection charm, Wednesday explained. Been in the Addams line for generations. Warns of poison, reveals invisible entities, and supposedly turns black when dark magic targets the wearer. Though that's hard to verify since it's already black. Harry was touched by the gesture, especially coming from the usually reserved Wednesday. Are you sure you want me to have this? Your family now, she said simply, as if that explained everything. And in the Addams household, it did. The pendant joined his mother's locket around his neck, two symbols of the families, birth and adopted, who protected him. The next morning dawned gray and overcast, perfect weather for a dark ritual according to Grandmama, who arrived at breakfast looking simultaneously exhausted and exhilarated, her hair even wilder than usual and stained with various potions ingredients. Everything's prepared, she announced. The goblins have the ritual chamber ready, the potions are brewed, the incantations practiced. Tonight, we extract a Dark Lord's soul fragment. Her enthusiasm wasn't entirely comforting, but Harry appreciated her confidence. The entire family would be attending, even Lurch and Thing, who Gomez explained had important roles in the ritual. Thing has the steadiest hand for drawing blood runes, he explained cheerfully over breakfast. And Lurch's basso profundo is perfect for the deeper intonations of the banishment chant. By mid-afternoon, they were ready to depart. Harry wore simple black robes that Morticia had prepared specially for the occasion, woven with protective runes in silver thread and treated with potions to resist dark magic. Around his neck hung Wednesday's raven pendant and his mother's locket, while in his pocket he carried his father's wand, not to use, but as an additional connection to his family magic. They traveled to Gringotts via a special portkey provided by the goblins, arriving in a chamber deep beneath the bank, far deeper than Harry had gone on his previous visits. The air here felt ancient, heavy with magic that prickled against his skin like static electricity. Ragnarok greeted them personally, dressed in ceremonial armor of gold and silver rather than his usual formal attire. Beside him stood Silverax and 3 other goblins introduced as the bank's ritual masters, all wearing similar ceremonial garb. The chamber is ready, Ragnarok informed them. We have 1 hour until the dark moon reaches its zenith, the optimal time for the extraction. He led them through massive doors carved with runes that seemed to shift and change as Harry looked at them, into a perfect circular chamber hewn from black stone veined with silver. In the center stood a raised dais with an altar of the same black stone, surrounded by a circle of silver inlaid into the floor. The ancient ritual chamber of Gringotts, Ragnarok said, his voice hushed with reverence. Used only for the most significant magical workings. The last ritual conducted here was over a century ago. Grandmama immediately began consulting with the goblin ritual masters, comparing notes and making final adjustments to the setup. Morticia took Harry aside to explain what would happen. You'll lie on the altar, she told him, her calm voice helping to steady his nerves. The circle will be activated with blood magic, a small cut on your palm and on the palm of each participant. This creates a sealed space where the soul fragment cannot escape or seek another host. Harry nodded, trying to commit the steps to memory. Then what? Grandmama and the Goblin Master Iron Fist will administer the preparation potion. It will place you in a receptive state, making it easier to separate your soul from the fragment. Then your mother's ring will be placed on your chest, directly over your heart, while we begin the chanting. Will it hurt? Harry asked, the question he'd been avoiding. Morticia didn't sugarcoat her answer. Yes. The fragment will resist extraction. But the pain will be temporary, and will be with you throughout. The moment the fragment is drawn out, the goblins will capture it in a containment vessel, and Gomez and I will reinforce your soul's integrity with stabilization magic. Harry took a deep breath and nodded. Pain he could handle. The Dursleys had ensured he had a high tolerance for physical discomfort. And if it meant being free of Voldemort's soul piece, it would be worth it. I'm ready, he said with more confidence than he felt. One more thing, Morticia added. Should anything go wrong, which we don't anticipate, but should the unexpected occur, we've prepared an emergency measure. She showed him a small vial of golden potion. This contains phoenix tears, freely given to the goblins by Fawkes, ironically Dumbledore's familiar. They have remarkable healing properties and can stabilize you long enough for us to attempt alternative measures. The preparations continued as the appointed hour drew near. Harry changed into a simple white ritual robe, embroidered with protective symbols in gold thread. His feet were bare against the cold stone floor as Gomez led him to the altar. Remember, Gomez said, unusually serious, focus on who you are, Harry. Your true self. The fragment may try to confuse you, to make you believe its thoughts are yours. Reject anything that doesn't feel like the real you. Harry nodded, clutching his father's wand in one hand and his mother's locket in the other as he lay back on the stone altar. It was cold and hard beneath him, but somehow reassuring in its solidity. Around the circle, the participants took their positions, Gomez and Morticia at his head, Grandmama and the Goblin Iron Fist at his feet, Wednesday and Pugsley at his left side, Lurch and Ragnarok at his right. Things scurried around the circumference of the circle, preparing small silver bowls at each position. It is time, Ragnarok announced solemnly. The dark moon has reached its zenith. Let the ritual begin. What followed was both terrifying and awe-inspiring. Each participant cut their palm with a silver ritual knife, allowing their blood to drip into the silver bowls. When Harry's turn came, Morticia guided his hand, making a small cut that stung but bled freely. As his blood touched the bowl, a surge of magic raced through the circle, causing the silver inlay in the floor to glow with an unearthly blue light. Grandmama approached with a goblet containing a swirling potion that changed colors as it moved, now black, now silver, now a deep, pulsing red. Drink, she instructed, her usual cackling manner replaced with solemn dignity. All of it, in one draught. The potion tasted of bitter herbs and copper, with an underlying sweetness that reminded Harry oddly of his mother's perfume from the few possessions he'd examined. As it reached his stomach, a strange warmth spread through him, followed by a floating sensation as though he were drifting just above the altar rather than lying on it. Morticia placed his mother's ring on his chest, directly over his heart. The metal felt warm, then hot, but not unpleasantly so, more like the heat of a living thing, pulsing in time with his heartbeat. The chanting began, Gomez and Morticia in Latin, the goblins in their own harsh, guttural language, Grandmama in what sounded like ancient Greek, and Lurch providing a bass drone that seemed to vibrate the very stones beneath them. Even Wednesday and Pugsley joined in, their young voices adding a higher counterpoint to the complex harmony. At first, Harry felt only the continued floating sensation and a pleasant warmth from the ring. Then, as the chanting intensified, the scar on his forehead began to tingle, then burn. The pain increased rapidly, becoming a white-hot brand that made him grit his teeth to avoid crying out. Resist, a voice whispered in his mind. Why suffer this pain? Tell them to stop. You need me. I can give you power beyond imagining. The voice was high, cold, and utterly alien, nothing like Harry's own thoughts. Remembering Morticia's warnings, he focused on rejecting it, concentrating instead on the faces of his parents from the photographs, on the Addams family's acceptance, on his own determination to be free. Fool, the voice hissed. They'll fail. They'll kill you in the attempt. The old magic is beyond them. The pain intensified further, spreading from his scar down through his body like liquid fire in his veins. Harry couldn't help it, he screamed, his back arching off the altar. Through the haze of agony, he saw Morticia and Gomez exchange alarmed glances, but they didn't stop chanting. If anything, they intensified their efforts, their voices rising above the others. The ring on his chest now glowed like a miniature sun, so bright it was painful to look at directly. Harry felt a wrenching sensation, as though something were being torn from him, not physically, but at a level more fundamental than flesh. And then he saw it, a dark, oily mist rising from his scar, writhing like a wounded snake as it was drawn toward a crystal vessel held by Silverax at the edge of the circle. The mist seemed to fight, trying to return to Harry, but the combined power of the ritual participants forced it inexorably toward the containment vessel. As the last wisps of darkness were pulled from his scar, Harry felt a sudden release, like a weight he hadn't known he was carrying had been lifted. His vision blurred, then cleared with a new sharpness. Colors seemed brighter, sounds more distinct, as though a filter had been removed from his senses. "It is done," Ragnarok announced as Silverax sealed the crystal vessel with goblin magic. "The soul fragment is contained." The glow from the silver circle dimmed but didn't fade entirely. Grandmama approached with another potion, this one a clear blue that sparkled in the ritual light. "Stabilization draft," she explained as she helped Harry sit up enough to drink it. "Seals your magical core and helps your soul recover from the extraction." This potion tasted of mint and something wild, mountain air, perhaps, or the ocean during a storm. It cleared the last of the pain from Harry's mind and left him feeling exhausted but whole in a way he couldn't quite explain. "How do you feel, Harry?" Morticia asked, her hand cool against his forehead where his scar had been burning moments before. "Different," he managed, his voice hoarse from screaming. "Lighter. Like something that wasn't me is gone." Gomez beamed. "Excellent sign. The fragment had been with you so long you'd accommodated to its presence. Feeling its absence means the extraction was complete." Silverax approached, holding the crystal vessel at arm's length. Inside, the dark mist churned furiously, occasionally taking shapes that resembled a distorted face contorted in rage. "We will destroy this immediately," she stated. "With your permission, Mr. Potter, as it was extracted from your person." Harry nodded weakly. "Please do. I don't want any part of him continuing to exist." "What about the locket?" Wednesday asked, practical as always. "The Horcrux you found among the Potter possessions?" "It too will be destroyed," Ragnarok confirmed. "Our curse breakers have determined that basilisk venom will be effective. We maintain a small supply for particularly resistant dark objects." As the goblins prepared to leave with the contained soul fragment, Morticia and Gomez helped Harry to sit up fully. His entire body ached as though he'd run a marathon, but his mind felt clearer than ever before. "The scar," Wednesday observed, leaning closer to examine his forehead. "It's changed." Harry reached up to touch the lightning bolt mark that had defined him for so long. It still felt raised against his skin, but when Morticia conjured a small mirror for him, he saw that it had faded from angry red to a pale silver, more like an old scar than a fresh wound. "The dark magic sustained it," Grandmama explained. "Without the soul fragment, it's just an ordinary scar now, well, as ordinary as any scar from a failed killing curse can be." They helped Harry to his feet, supporting him as his legs threatened to buckle. The ritual had taken more out of him than he'd realized. But despite the physical weakness, he felt mentally stronger than ever, more focused, more present, as though a constant background noise he'd never noticed had suddenly stopped. "You did wonderfully, Harry," Morticia assured him as they prepared to leave the ritual chamber. "Many adult wizards would not have withstood such an ordeal with your composure." "Indeed." Gomez agreed enthusiastically. "A true Addams performance. Facing down eldritch horrors with style." Harry smiled weakly at their praise. "I couldn't have done it without all of you. Thank you, for everything." "Family stands together against dark forces," Wednesday stated simply, as if reciting a lesson long learned. "Especially those that try to possess us." "Has that happened often in your family?" Harry asked, only half joking. Great-Aunt Demonica had quite the battle with a Dybbuk in 1897, Pugsley supplied helpfully. Took 3 exorcisms and a shotgun wedding to sort it out. Harry wasn't entirely sure whether to believe this, but the story made him laugh, which seemed to please the Addamses. They made their way back through Gringotts' lower levels to a recovery chamber the Goblins had prepared, where Harry was instructed to rest while the others finalized arrangements with Ragnarok. As he lay on a surprisingly comfortable couch, drifting in and out of sleep, Harry reflected on how much his life had changed in just over a week. From unwanted burden at the Dursleys to cherished family member with the Addamses. From ignorance of his heritage to growing knowledge of his parents and their world. From unwitting Horcrux to free soul. Whatever challenges lay ahead, Dumbledore's machinations, his eventual return to Wizarding Society, the looming question of whether Voldemort could return, Harry knew he wouldn't face them alone. He had the Addamses now, with all their macabre wisdom and strange affection. For the first time in his life, Harry Potter had a real family. And if that family happened to be the strangest, most death-obsessed collection of individuals in the magical world, well, that suited him just fine. Chapter 3, The Letter from Nowhere. The late July sun beat down on the bizarre botanical collection of the Addams greenhouse, where species that had no business thriving in the British climate nonetheless flourished under Morticia's devoted care. Harry Potter stood beside a particularly aggressive venomous tentacula, carefully collecting seed pods while avoiding its reaching vines. "Remember to wear your dragonhide gloves," Morticia reminded him as she elegantly pruned a plant whose blossoms resembled human faces frozen in silent screams. "These particular specimens have developed a rather ingenious neurotoxin that causes temporary paralysis. Fascinating adaptation, but inconvenient if you're caught unaware." "Yes, Morticia," Harry replied, adjusting the heavy protective gloves that had been a gift for his 10th birthday back in January. Nearly 3 years had passed since the Goblins had rescued him from the Dursleys and placed him with the Addams family, and in that time, Harry had grown from a malnourished, timid child into a confident, if somewhat unusual, young wizard. The extraction of Voldemort's soul fragment had marked a turning point in his development. Freed from the dark influence that had subtly affected him for years, Harry had taken to the Addams style of magical education with remarkable aptitude. His natural intelligence, suppressed during his years with the Dursleys, had flourished under the eccentric but effective tutelage of his adoptive family. "I think that's enough seed pods for Grandmama's paralysis potion," Harry said, carefully sealing the collection jar. "Do you need help with the screaming snapdragons?" Morticia smiled, her pale features lighting with the particular joy she always exhibited when discussing her botanical monstrosities. "No need, dear. Wednesday has been assisting me with their vocal cord development. We've finally achieved a perfect high C that can shatter crystallized dragon blood at 30 paces." Harry nodded as if this were a perfectly normal horticultural accomplishment. In the Addams household, it was. As they finished their work in the greenhouse, Harry's thoughts drifted to the approaching date that had dominated family discussions for weeks, his 11th birthday. In just 4 days, Harry Potter would reach the age when British magical children received their Hogwarts letters. The impending collision between his secluded life with the Addams family and the wider wizarding world that awaited him created a complex mix of excitement and apprehension. "You're thinking about your letter again, aren't you?" Morticia observed with her uncanny perceptiveness. Harry sighed. "Is it that obvious? Your aura darkens when you're contemplating potentially unpleasant social obligations," she explained, removing her gardening gloves and placing them in a container marked with several warning symbols. "A very Addams trait, though your darkness has more green undertones than our traditional purple. I'm just wondering what will happen when they realize where I've been for the past 3 years, Harry admitted as they walked from the greenhouse back toward the mansion. "Dumbledore has been searching all this time, and the Ministry still doesn't know officially that I'm here." The subject of Albus Dumbledore had become increasingly complicated as Harry had learned more about the machinations that had placed him with the Dursleys and the financial exploitation that had followed. Through a combination of Goblin intelligence and the Addams family's extensive network of unusual contacts, they had pieced together a troubling picture of the headmaster's actions regarding the boy who lived. "Dumbledore will certainly attempt to reassert control," Morticia agreed, her voice cooling noticeably at mention of the wizard. But the legal protections remain firmly in our favor. The blood-signed guardianship cannot be overturned without your consent, and the goblins have made it clear that any attempt to remove you from our care would constitute a breach of treaty. Harry nodded, having heard similar reassurances before, but couldn't quite shake his unease. Dumbledore was, by all accounts, an extraordinarily powerful and influential wizard. His increasingly desperate attempts to locate Harry had included everything from magical tracking spells, thwarted by the Addams mansion's ancient protections, to leveraging his political connections to pressure the Department of Magical Law Enforcement into launching an investigation, stymied by international jurisdictional complications, as the Addams family maintained their primary residence in America. As they entered the mansion through the conservatory doors, they found Gomez in the library, engaged in an animated fencing match with an enchanted suit of armor. Despite the armor's aggressive lunges, Gomez maintained a running commentary on international financial markets while parrying its attacks. "Harry, my boy," he exclaimed upon noticing them, executing a complex maneuver that temporarily disarmed his metallic opponent. "Just the young wizard I wanted to see. The goblins have sent their latest report on the Potter investments. Your reallocation into Norwegian dragon sanctuaries has tripled in value. Magnificent instincts for disaster profiteering." Harry grinned as he accepted the portfolio Gomez tossed his way. One of the many unexpected aspects of his education with the Addamses had been instruction in financial management. Gomez, whose eccentric investment strategy somehow consistently yielded extraordinary returns, had taken particular delight in teaching Harry how to manage the Potter fortune. Dragon fire destroyed 3 major logging operations, driving up the price of sustainable heartwood, Harry noted, scanning the report. "Just as we predicted." "Precisely." Gomez beamed with pride. "Catastrophe creates opportunity. The Addams investment philosophy in action." The suit of armor, apparently tired of being ignored, attempted to skewer Gomez from behind. Without looking, he sidestepped the thrust and disarmed the armor with a flick of his wrist, sending its sword clattering to the floor. "Point to me, I believe," he said cheerfully. "That's 37-12 this week. You're improving, old fellow." The armor slumped in what could only be described as dejection. "Now then," Gomez continued, turning back to Harry, "I've been in communication with our legal representative at the ICW. When your Hogwarts letter arrives, we'll need to execute the formal acknowledgement with certain modifications to protect our position." The International Confederation of Wizards had become an unexpected ally in the complex legal maneuvering surrounding Harry's guardianship. The Addams family's ancient status and connections in multiple magical jurisdictions had proven useful in maintaining a buffer between Harry and British ministry interference. "What kind of modifications?" Harry asked, settling into one of the library's ornate chairs. "Nothing that affects your education," Morticia assured him, conjuring tea with a graceful wave of her hand, a wandless magic technique she had been teaching Harry with considerable success. "Merely formal recognition that your guardianship remains with us, that certain Hogwarts regulations regarding parental authority are superseded by our pre-existing arrangement, and that any medical or disciplinary matters must involve our consultation. Also," Gomez added with a mischievous twinkle, "a delightful clause specifying that any attempt to modify your memories, administer potions without our consent, or subject you to unregistered magical artifacts constitutes grounds for immediate litigation under Clause 16 of the International Statute for the Protection of Magical Minors." Harry raised an eyebrow. "You're expecting Dumbledore to try something like that?" "We prefer to anticipate the worst in people," Morticia explained. "It's so much more satisfying when they live down to one's expectations." Their conversation was interrupted by Wednesday's arrival, her perpetually solemn face bearing what Harry had learned to recognize as her version of excitement, a barely perceptible widening of the eyes and slight tightening of the lips. "Harry," she said without preamble, "Socrates and Plato have detected something approaching the property. They say it feels like a post owl, but wrong somehow." In the years since Harry had discovered his Parseltongue ability, the two-headed Runspore had become an invaluable ally. Their sensitivity to magical presences often provided early warning of unusual occurrences around the mansion. Harry exchanged glances with Gomez and Morticia. Could it be my Hogwarts letter? It's a few days early. Perhaps, Morticia said thoughtfully. Though Wednesday's description is concerning. Hogwarts typically uses standard post owls. Let's find out, shall we? Gomez suggested, his eternal enthusiasm for potential conflict evident as he sheathed his fencing foil. To the North Tower. Best vantage point for aerial approaches. The North Tower of Addams Manor offered a panoramic view of the surrounding countryside, including the family graveyard, the forest beyond, and the small Muggle village visible as a cluster of distant lights. As they reached the observation platform, Pugsley was already there, tracking something through an ancient brass telescope mounted on a grotesque gargoyle pedestal. There it is, he reported, adjusting the focus. Definitely an owl, but its flight pattern is weird. Keeps circling like it's confused, then trying to approach, then getting pushed back. Harry took his turn at the telescope and quickly spotted the bird, a tawny owl carrying what appeared to be a letter, struggling against what seemed to be an invisible barrier surrounding the mansion. The property wards are rejecting it, Morticia observed. Interesting. Standard post owls can penetrate our basic protections. Which means this one has been modified somehow, Gomez concluded, rubbing his hands together with disturbing glee. Tracking charms. Compulsion spells. Portkey enchantments. The possibilities are delightfully suspicious. Should we let it through? Harry asked, watching the owl's increasingly frustrated attempts to deliver its burden. Not directly, Wednesday advised. If it carries hostile magic, bringing it within the mansion's inner wards could compromise our security. Quite right, my brilliant girl. Gomez beamed at his daughter. Prudence first, then controlled risk. Harry, perhaps you could use the interception point in the cemetery? The containment circle is designed for exactly this sort of situation. The interception point was one of many magical security measures the Addamses had established around their property. Located near Great Aunt Logarithma's impressively ornate mausoleum, the stone circle was designed to temporarily neutralize most magical effects on objects brought within its boundaries. Harry nodded and headed down the tower stairs, Wednesday falling into step beside him. Though still solemn and macabre in her interests, the eldest Addams child had developed a fierce protectiveness toward Harry over the years. At nearly 13, she had already mastered numerous obscure defensive spells that most adult witches would find challenging, and had taken it upon herself to ensure that Harry was similarly prepared. Remember to activate the suppression runes before the owl crosses the boundary, she reminded him as they traversed the garden path leading to the cemetery. And don't touch the letter directly until the containment field confirms it's clean. I know the protocol, Wednesday, Harry replied with a smile, appreciating her concern even while finding it slightly amusing. 3 years with the Addamses had given him confidence in his ability to handle magical threats, especially with the extensive training he'd received. They reached the interception point, a circle of black stones inlaid with silver runes that glinted in the afternoon sunlight. Harry took up position in the center while Wednesday remained outside, her hand near the wand holster concealed in her sleeve. With a series of precise gestures Harry had practiced countless times, he activated the containment field. The runes flared blue, then settled into a subtle shimmer that distorted the air within the circle. Aprio limitatum, he called out, opening a controlled pathway through the mansion's outer wards while maintaining the protective barrier around himself. The effect was immediate. The struggling owl, suddenly finding a clear path, dove toward them with obvious relief. It circled once before landing on a stone perch specifically designed for such interceptions. Harry approached cautiously, noting the owl's appearance. It seemed like a standard tawny owl, but its eyes had an unusual glassiness that suggested magical influence. Specialis Revelio, he murmured, casting the detection charm Morticia had taught him. The owl and its letter briefly glowed with multiple magical signatures. Most concerning was a pulsing red aura that typically indicated tracking magic of unusual potency. Compulsion charms, tracking spells, and some kind of memory modification on the owl itself, Wednesday observed from outside the circle. Excessive security measures for a standard acceptance letter. Harry nodded in agreement. Definitely Dumbledore's work. The magical signature matches the samples Gringotts provided from the items he'd taken from my vaults. With practiced movements, he used a pair of enchanted silver tongs to remove the letter from the owl's leg. The bird hooted indignantly but remained on its perch, apparently compelled to wait for a response despite its obvious confusion at being unable to complete its delivery properly. The letter itself was exactly what Harry had expected, a heavy parchment envelope addressed in emerald green ink, Mr. H. Potter, The Strangling Room, Addams Manor, Exmoor, England. The address is correct, Harry noted with surprise. I thought the mansion was unplottable. It is, Wednesday confirmed, her eyes narrowing. The Hogwarts quill must be extraordinarily powerful to penetrate those protections, even partially. Note that it identified your room but not the exact location of the mansion. Harry carefully broke the Hogwarts seal, a shield divided into quadrants representing the 4 houses, and extracted the letter using the tongs. The contents were standard, according to what the Addamses had prepared him for: Hogwarts School of Witchcraft and Wizardry Headmaster, Albus Dumbledore, Order of Merlin, First Class, Grand Source, CHF, Warlock, Supreme Mugwump, International Confeat, of Wizards. Dear Mr. Potter, we are pleased to inform you that you have been accepted at Hogwarts School of Witchcraft and Wizardry. Please find enclosed a list of all necessary books and equipment. Term begins on September 1st. We await your owl by no later than July 31st. Yours sincerely, Minerva McGonagall, Deputy Headmistress. The second page contained the standard list of required supplies, from robes and books to a wand and cauldron. Nothing in the text itself seemed unusual, but the entire letter radiated the same tracking magic they had detected on the owl. They've enchanted the parchment itself, Harry observed. Probably designed to update Dumbledore on my location the moment I touch it directly. Quite elegant, actually, Wednesday commented with the clinical appreciation she reserved for particularly well-executed dark magic. The compulsion charms are layered to encourage immediate handling without protective measures. Harry carefully placed the letter in a containment envelope made of dragon hide, one of many security precautions the Addamses had prepared in anticipation of this moment. We should take this to Gomez and Morticia. They'll want to prepare our response according to the legal framework they've established. As they turned to leave, the owl hooted plaintively, still magically bound to await a reply. What about the messenger? Wednesday asked. It's been tampered with extensively. Harry considered the poor creature, which had been magically compelled to serve Dumbledore's purposes. We can't just send it back still under those spells. Grandmama has that purging potion for magical influences. Wednesday nodded. I'll retrieve it. The bird will need to be contained until we can verify all tracking magic has been neutralized. By the time they returned to the mansion, Gomez and Morticia had already gathered in the main study with Grandmama, who was examining the enchanted letter through a crystal monocle that revealed magical signatures in vivid detail. Fascinating work, she cackled, prodding the parchment with a gnarled finger. Dumbledore's magic has a distinctive flair, those little flourishes in the compulsion weave are almost artistic. Shame about his ethics. Can you neutralize the tracking components without destroying the letter itself? Morticia asked. We'll need the original for our formal response. Of course, Grandmama waved dismissively. A simple alchemical bath should dissolve the external enchantments while preserving the base acceptance magic. I'll need essence of misdirection, powdered unicorn hoof, and a splash of that lovely Caribbean rum Gomez keeps for special occasions. Excellent. Gomez declared. And while you work on that, I'll contact our representative at the ICW to begin the formal response process. We anticipated this moment, after all. He turned to Harry with a broad smile that curled his mustache at the ends. Well, my boy, the moment has arrived. Your formal entry into British Wizarding Society. Are you ready for the adulation, the scrutiny, and the inevitable assassination attempts? Gomez, Morticia chided gently, you're getting ahead of events again. Let's address the acceptance process before we worry about the assassination attempts. Those typically don't begin until at least the second week of term. Harry couldn't help but laugh at their casual approach to potential danger. 3 years with the Addams family had fundamentally altered his perspective on what constituted a normal level of risk. Where once he had feared his uncle's temper and cousin's bullying, he now approached threats with a calculated confidence born of extensive preparation and the absolute certainty that his adoptive family would back him unconditionally. I'm ready, he confirmed. We've been preparing for this since the Goblins first brought me here. Indeed, much of Harry's education had been structured with his eventual attendance at Hogwarts in mind. While the Addamses practiced older, more primal forms of magic than those taught in the British curriculum, they had ensured that Harry would be able to adapt his knowledge to the more standardized approaches he would encounter at school. This calls for a celebration, Gomez declared. Lurch. The special occasion refreshments. The towering butler materialized with his usual uncanny timing, bearing a tray containing glasses filled with a bubbling liquid that shifted through various improbable colors and occasionally emitted small sparks. What is that? Harry asked, accepting a glass cautiously. Addams effervescence, Morticia explained. A family tradition for momentous occasions. Don't worry, we've adjusted the formula to be non-hallucinogenic for those under 17. Harry took a tentative sip and was pleasantly surprised by the taste, something between exotic fruits and a summer thunderstorm, with an aftertaste reminiscent of birthday cake. The bubbles popped against his tongue with tiny bursts of harmless magical energy that sent pleasant tingles through his body. To Harry's next great adventure. Gomez toasted, raising his glass high. May Hogwarts survive the experience. They all drank, even Wednesday allowing a rare small smile to grace her features as she sipped her portion. The atmosphere was celebratory but underscored by the serious preparation that would follow. Harry's entry into Hogwarts would be carefully managed to maintain the protections the Addamses had established while allowing him to experience the education his parents had valued. Now, Morticia said once the toast was complete, we have much to arrange before September 1st. Harry's public reappearance must be carefully orchestrated, particularly given Dumbledore's obvious attempts to regain control. Indeed. Gomez agreed. First priority, secure communication channels that bypass standard Hogwarts monitoring. Can't have the old wizard intercepting our correspondence. I've been working on that, Wednesday interjected. A variation on the family's two-way mirrors, but disguised as a standard journal. Harry writes in it here, and the text appears in my corresponding book at home. Brilliant, Wednesday. Gomez beamed at his daughter. The perfect blend of traditional magical artifice and paranoid security measures. We'll also need to finalize arrangements for Harry's school supplies, Morticia continued. A visit to Diagon Alley is traditional, but given the likely public reaction to Harry Potter's first appearance in magical society in nearly a decade, we'll need appropriate precautions. The discussion continued well into the evening, covering everything from security protocols for Harry's time at Hogwarts to contingency plans should Dumbledore attempt to interfere with their guardianship. Through it all, Harry found himself increasingly excited despite the complications. He was finally going to enter the world his parents had inhabited, would learn magic in the same halls where they had studied, would perhaps even make friends his own age who understood what it meant to be a wizard. Not that he was dissatisfied with his life among the Addamses, far from it. The eccentric family had given him love, acceptance, and education far beyond what most magical children received. But there remained a part of him that yearned to connect with his parents' legacy, to understand the world they had died protecting. Later that night, as Harry prepared for bed in the strangling room, whose carnivorous vines had developed a peculiar affection for him over the years, now curling protectively rather than predatorily when he slept, he found himself contemplating the challenges ahead. His window overlooked the family graveyard, where moonlight cast long shadows between the tombstones and occasionally glinted off the spectral forms of restless ancestors taking their nightly constitutional. A soft knock at his door interrupted his thoughts. "Come in," he called, expecting Morticia with her customary evening check-in. Instead, it was Wednesday who entered, carrying what appeared to be an ancient leather-bound book. "I thought you might want this tonight," she said, handing him the volume. It belonged to great-great-grandfather Corvus Addams, who attended Hogwarts in 1789. Harry accepted the book curiously. The cover bore no title, only the Addams raven embossed in faded silver. A journal? Wednesday nodded. He documented his time at Hogwarts from a unique perspective. The professors apparently found his experimental approach to transmutation disturbing, especially after the incident with the Transfiguration teacher's cat. Harry raised an eyebrow. "Do I want to know?" "Probably not before bedtime," Wednesday conceded. But his observations on Hogwarts' secret passages, the castle's defensive enchantments, and the political dynamics between houses might prove useful. Knowledge is protection. The fact that Wednesday had thought to provide him with this resource touched Harry deeply. For all her outward solemnity and macabre interests, she had become the sister he'd never had, fiercely protective in her own understated way. "Thank you, Wednesday," he said sincerely. "This means a lot." She nodded, her expression softening almost imperceptibly. The Addamses have always maintained certain traditions when family members venture into potentially hostile territory. This is one of them, passing down knowledge that might not be found in conventional sources. "I'll study it carefully," Harry promised. Wednesday hesitated in a most un-Wednesday-like manner before adding, "Hogwarts won't understand you at first. Your upbringing with us has been unconventional, even by magical standards." Harry smiled. "You mean most 11-year-olds don't know how to brew poisons, communicate with the dead, or disable cursed objects?" "Precisely." A ghost of a smile touched her lips. "Remember that your differences are strengths, not weaknesses. The Addams perspective gives you options others won't even consider." With that unusually emotional advice, she bid him good night and departed, leaving Harry with the ancient journal and much to contemplate. As he began leafing through Corvus Addams's detailed accounts of Hogwarts in the 18th century, complete with disturbing illustrations of his more creative magical experiments, Harry felt a complex mixture of emotions. Excitement for the new chapter beginning in his life. Apprehension about facing Dumbledore and the wider wizarding world's expectations. Gratitude for the Addams family's thorough preparation. And beneath it all, a quiet determination to honor both his birth parents' legacy and his adoptive family's traditions. Whatever Hogwarts held in store for him, Harry Potter would face it as both a Potter and an Addams, a combination the magical world was entirely unprepared for. The days following the arrival of Harry's Hogwarts letter passed in a whirlwind of preparation. Grandmama successfully neutralized the tracking enchantments on the original letter, allowing the family to prepare a formal response that included the legal provisions Gomez had arranged through their ICW contacts. The modified acceptance was sent back with a different owl, specifically avoiding the magically compromised messenger Dumbledore had dispatched. "The look on the old wizard's face when he receives our terms will be priceless," Gomez chuckled as he sealed the envelope with the Addams family crest in black wax. Nothing like formal notice of multiple pending lawsuits to dampen one's manipulative tendencies. Indeed, the response included not only Harry's acceptance of his place at Hogwarts but also formal notification of legal action regarding the unauthorized withdrawals from his vaults, improper placement with abusive guardians, and misappropriation of Potter family heirlooms. The documents had been prepared by both Goblin legal experts and the Addams' formidable international counsel, creating a veritable minefield of legal complications should Dumbledore attempt to reassert control over Harry. "Remember," Morticia advised as she reviewed the final documents with Harry, "this legal framework doesn't prevent Dumbledore from attempting more creative approaches. Be vigilant, especially regarding apparently innocuous offers of sweets, unusual personal items offered as gifts or requests for private meetings." Harry nodded, having been thoroughly briefed on the various methods magical influence could be exerted. The Goblins provided amulets to detect most potions and compulsion charms, he reminded her, touching the silver raven pendant that hung beneath his robes, a gift from Wednesday that had been additionally enchanted by Gringotts Cursebreakers to warn against magical tampering. And you've memorized the emergency port key activation phrase? Gomez asked. Memento mori, followed by 3 taps on the pendant, Harry confirmed. It will transport me directly to the secure room at Gringotts, where the goblins will contact you immediately. Excellent. Gomez beamed, clapping Harry on the shoulder. Properly paranoid, just as we've taught you. 3 days after receiving his Hogwarts letter, on Harry's actual 11th birthday, the Addams family presented him with gifts specifically chosen to support his time at school. From Gomez and Morticia came an enchanted trunk with multiple compartments, including a secure space for potions ingredients that would have made most Aurors deeply suspicious, a library section with preservation charms for ancient texts, and a communication portal linked directly to Addams Manor. The portal is keyed to your magical signature, Morticia explained as she demonstrated its use. Simply place your hand here and speak, Familia Semper. It creates a temporary connection to the mansion, allowing you to pass objects or written messages without risking interception. Grandmama's gift was a comprehensive potions kit containing ingredients rarely found in standard student supplies, many of which skirted the edge of ministry regulations regarding controlled substances. Nothing technically illegal, she assured him with a wink that was not entirely reassuring, just uncommon enough to raise eyebrows. The vial in the velvet pouch is dragon's blood from a particularly ancient Norwegian ridgeback, invaluable for protective potions and certain antidotes you won't learn in class but might need nonetheless. Pugsley contributed a collection of what he called defensive devices, but which most would classify as ingenious magical traps, ranging from portable swamps with carnivorous tendencies to smoke bombs that induce temporary but vivid hallucinations. The green ones make people see spiders everywhere, he explained enthusiastically. The purple ones cause visions of their greatest fears. And the black ones, well, those are still experimental. Last test subject thought he was a chicken for 3 days. Wednesday's gift was perhaps the most practical, a comprehensive grimoire she had compiled herself, containing not only standard defensive spells taught at Hogwarts but also the older, more primal magic the Addamses practiced. The book was disguised to appear as Standard Defensive Theory, Volume 1, to casual observers, but revealed its true contents to Harry's touch. I've included the wandless techniques Mother has been teaching you, she explained as they reviewed the grimoire together. Most British wizards neglect these skills entirely, relying too heavily on their wands. In a genuine emergency, the ability to channel magic without a focus could prove decisive. Even Lurch and Thing contributed to Harry's preparation for Hogwarts. The butler presented him with a set of enchanted formal wear for school events, clothing that appeared to conform to Hogwarts regulations but incorporated protective enchantments in the fabric itself. Thing, meanwhile, had somehow acquired a set of skeleton keys that could allegedly open any lock in Hogwarts, presented in a small velvet box with obvious pride. Where did Thing get these? Harry asked, examining the ancient keys with their strange, shifting teeth that seemed to adapt as he held them. Best not to inquire too deeply, Gomez advised with a wink. Thing has connections in places that defy conventional understanding of space and time. Wonderful for acquiring hard-to-find items, though occasionally the items themselves bend certain laws of physics in concerning ways. The final preparation before Harry's departure for Hogwarts was perhaps the most significant, a visit to Diagon Alley to purchase his official school supplies. This would mark Harry's first public appearance in magical society since the Goblins had removed him from the Dursleys, and the family anticipated considerable attention. We'll need to manage the narrative carefully, Morticia observed as they finalized their plans. The story of Harry Potter, raised by the Addams family after rescue from abusive muggles, will cause quite the sensation. Particularly when the Prophet realizes that Dumbledore's carefully crafted tale of your secure, happy childhood was entirely fictional. Not to mention the financial implications when the audit results become public knowledge, Gomez added gleefully. Nothing magical society loves more than a good scandal involving misappropriated gold. The strategy they developed was deliberately provocative, a highly visible visit to Diagon Alley with the full Addams family in attendance, including scheduled stops at Gringotts, where the Goblins would formally acknowledge Harry as a client under Addams' guardianship, Flourish and Blots for his schoolbooks, and Ollivanders for his wand. The timing was calculated to create maximum impact in the wizarding press, occurring just as families were beginning their own school shopping in early August. The prophet will have photographers stationed throughout the alley, Gomez predicted as they gathered for breakfast on the appointed day. We might as well give them something worth photographing. Lurch, my most dramatic cape for today's excursion. The butler groaned acknowledgement and shuffled away to fetch the requested garment, returning moments later with a sweeping black cape lined with blood-red silk that seemed to move of its own volition when Gomez donned it with a flourish. Harry couldn't help but smile at his adoptive family's approach. Where most would attempt to minimize attention for a child in his position, the Addamses believed in confronting public scrutiny head-on, preferably while dressed in a manner that left no doubt as to their unconventional nature. For his own part, Harry was dressed in custom-tailored robes that blended wizarding fashion with subtle Addams touches, primarily black with deep green accents that matched his eyes, cut in a style reminiscent of 19th-century formal wear but adapted for a modern young wizard. His lightning scar, faded to a silvery mark since the removal of the soul fragment, remained partially visible beneath his unruly black hair. Remember, Morticia advised as they prepared to depart via Fleur to the Leaky Cauldron, maintain the poise we've practiced. First impressions will significantly influence how wizarding society perceives you. Harry nodded, standing straighter. The Addamses had included deportment in his education, teaching him to move with the confident grace that characterized their family. Gone was the hunched posture of the abused child from Privet Drive, in his place stood a young wizard who carried himself with quiet dignity and observant watchfulness. And if anyone asks impertinent questions about your scar or your parents' deaths? Wednesday prompted, adjusting the silver pins in her braids, which, Harry had learned, concealed miniature poison darts, just in case. I informed them that such personal matters aren't appropriate topics for casual conversation, and suggest they direct any pressing concerns to our legal representatives, Harry recited, having practiced this response extensively. Perfect. Gomez beamed. Polite but firm boundary setting, with just a hint of litigious threat. You've mastered the Addams approach to unwanted social interaction. Their arrival at the Leaky Cauldron created exactly the stir they had anticipated. The shabby pub connecting Muggle London to Diagon Alley fell suddenly silent as the Addams family emerged from the Fleur in rapid succession, their distinctive appearance immediately drawing every eye in the establishment. Gomez led the way, his dramatic cape billowing behind him as he strode forward with his characteristic exuberance. Morticia followed, gliding with ethereal grace, her flowing black dress seeming to absorb the light around her. Wednesday and Pugsley flanked Harry, creating a protective formation that had been carefully choreographed, while Grandmama brought up the rear, her wild white hair and numerous clanking amulets adding to the spectacle. The silence lasted precisely 3 seconds before the whispers began. Is that Harry Potter? But who are those people with him? Look at the scar. Where has he been all these years? Tom, the bartender, was the first to approach, his weathered face showing a mixture of shock and delight. Bless my soul, Harry Potter. Welcome back to the wizarding world, Mr. Potter. Harry inclined his head slightly, just as Morticia had taught him. Thank you. I'm looking forward to beginning my education at Hogwarts. His polite but measured response seemed to further disconcert the gathered witches and wizards, who had perhaps expected a more typically childish reaction. Before anyone could press forward with questions, Gomez stepped in with perfect timing. Gomez Addams, he introduced himself with a flourish, extending his hand to Tom. Harry's guardian these past 3 years. Charming establishment you have here. Reminds me of a delightful pub in Transylvania where my brother Fester once spent 6 months hanging upside down from the rafters as part of a therapeutic regime for his spleen condition. Tom blinked rapidly, clearly unsure how to respond to this information. Thank you, Mr. Addams. It's an honor to have your family visit the Leaky Cauldron. The honor is mutual, my good man. Gomez clapped Tom on the shoulder with enough force to make the barkeeper stagger slightly. Now, if you'll excuse us, young Harry has school supplies to purchase, and the goblins are expecting us for some financial matters of a most interesting nature." The family moved toward the rear exit leading to Diagon Alley, parting the crowd of gawking patrons who seemed too stunned by the Addamses' appearance to press forward with the questions clearly burning on their tongues. As they reached the brick wall, a tall wizard in midnight blue robes stepped forward, his long silver beard and half-moon spectacles instantly recognizable from the descriptions Harry had studied. "Albus Dumbledore." "Harry, my dear boy," the headmaster said, his voice warm and grandfatherly despite the calculating look in his eyes. "What a pleasure to see you well. I've been quite concerned about your whereabouts these past years." The timing of Dumbledore's appearance was too perfect to be coincidental. He had clearly been waiting, perhaps alerted by monitoring charms on the leaky cauldron's flow connection. Harry maintained the composed expression he had practiced for precisely this eventuality. "Headmaster Dumbledore. Thank you for your concern, though it seems somewhat belated considering the conditions you left me in at the Dursleys." A flicker of something, surprise, perhaps, or discomfort, crossed Dumbledore's features before his genial smile reasserted itself. "I understand there may have been some misunderstandings regarding your placement. Perhaps we could discuss these matters privately. I'm sure we can clear up any confusion." "I think not, Headmaster," Morticia interjected smoothly, moving to stand beside Harry with a protective grace that nonetheless conveyed unmistakable warning. "Any discussions regarding Harry's guardianship or previous living arrangements should be directed through our legal representatives, as outlined in the documentation recently provided to Hogwarts." Dumbledore's eyes, having lost some of their twinkle, shifted to Morticia. "Mrs. Addams, I presume. While I appreciate your concern, there are matters regarding Harry's safety and magical heritage that require more specialized knowledge. Knowledge such as the soul fragment that was embedded in his scar?" Wednesday asked flatly, her dark eyes fixed unblinkingly on the headmaster. "Or perhaps you refer to the financial irregularities discovered in the Potter vaults under your guardianship?" The sudden tension in Dumbledore's posture was subtle but unmistakable to those trained to observe such details. The Addamses had deliberately revealed their awareness of matters the headmaster had likely hoped to keep concealed. "Young lady," Dumbledore began, his tone now carrying an edge beneath its surface warmth, "these are complex magical and legal matters not appropriate for public discussion." "On that single point, we agree completely," Gomez declared, stepping forward with a dangerous smile that caused his mustache to quiver at the ends. "Which is why we've engaged both the Goblin Nation and the International Confederation's Judiciary Committee to address them properly. Fascinating proceedings ahead, discovery phase alone could take months. We've reserved a special vault just for the documentation." By now, the gathered crowd in the leaky cauldron was watching the exchange with undisguised fascination. Several patrons had edged closer to overhear, and Harry noticed at least one wizard scribbling notes on a small pad, likely a reporter who recognized the news value of this unexpected confrontation. Dumbledore seemed to realize the same, as his next words were pitched lower, clearly intended to de-escalate the public aspect of their interaction. "Perhaps we might continue this discussion at another time. I merely wish to welcome Harry back to our world and ensure his preparations for Hogwarts were proceeding smoothly." "How thoughtful," Morticia replied with glacial politeness. "Rest assured, Headmaster, Harry will arrive at Hogwarts fully prepared for his education. We've made certain of that." The subtle emphasis on "fully prepared" was not lost on Dumbledore, whose gaze sharpened as he studied Harry more carefully. Whatever he saw in the poised young wizard standing confidently among the Addams family seemed to concern him further. "I look forward to seeing you at the welcome feast, Harry," he said finally. "Should you need anything before term begins, please don't hesitate to contact me directly." Harry inclined his head slightly. "Thank you, Headmaster. I'm looking forward to experiencing Hogwarts, just as my parents did." The mention of James and Lily Potter seemed to affect Dumbledore more than anything else that had been said. A fleeting expression of genuine regret crossed his features before the carefully maintained facade returned. With a final nod to the assembled Addamses, Dumbledore stepped back and departed through the pub's front entrance, leaving a wake of whispers and speculation behind him. Round 1 to us, I believe, Gomez commented cheerfully once the headmaster had gone. Excellent form, Harry. Just the right blend of politeness and implied accusation. He's already recalculating his approach, Wednesday observed. The public confrontation was a tactical error on his part. He'll switch to more subtle methods now. Undoubtedly, Morticia agreed. But our purpose today was to establish Harry's position publicly, and in that, we've succeeded. Shall we proceed to the alley? I believe the goblins are expecting us at 9:30 precisely. Tom, still looking slightly dazed by the exchange he had witnessed, hurried over to tap the correct bricks with his wand, opening the archway to Diagon Alley. The magical shopping district beyond was already bustling with activity, and heads turned immediately as the unusual family stepped through. Their progress down the cobblestone street created a ripple effect of recognition and whispers. Witches and wizards paused in their shopping to stare openly at Harry Potter, accompanied by what was clearly not a conventional wizarding family. The Addamses, for their part, seemed to revel in the attention, with Gomez occasionally stopping to enthusiastically greet complete strangers as though they were old friends, leaving them blinking in confusion in his wake. Gringotts stood imposing and marble white at the far end of the street, and the goblins had clearly anticipated their arrival. As the family approached the bronze doors, they found Griphook waiting on the steps, dressed in formal goblin attire that signified his elevated status since becoming liaison to the Potter-Addams account. Mr. Potter, Lord and Lady Addams, the goblin greeted them with a bow that was deliberately deeper than goblins typically offered wizards, a public statement of respect that was not lost on the observing crowd. Director Ragnarok awaits you in the Platinum Consultation Chamber. This, too, was calculated. The Platinum Chamber was reserved for Gringotts' most elite clients, and being escorted there directly from the entrance, bypassing the main hall and teller queues, was a privilege few wizards ever experienced. The message to watching eyes was clear: Harry Potter held a position of exceptional status with the Goblin Nation. Excellent, excellent. Gomez replied enthusiastically. Lead on, my good fellow. Financial discussions await, my favorite form of morning entertainment, except perhaps for balancing on the battlements during a lightning storm. Their path through Gringotts took them past dozens of staring wizards conducting their own banking business. By the time they reached the ornate platinum doors of the special consultation chamber, word of Harry Potter's appearance with the strange family and his apparent high standing with the goblins had undoubtedly begun spreading throughout the alley. Director Ragnarok greeted them personally, another honor rarely bestowed on wizards. The ancient goblin's sharp teeth gleamed in what passed for a welcoming smile as he ushered them into the opulent chamber, where refreshments had been arranged on a table of polished obsidian. Mr. Potter, how appropriate that your first public appearance in magical Britain includes a visit to those who have safeguarded your inheritance, Ragnarok observed once they were seated. The Prophet's financial correspondent is already requesting a statement regarding your accounts. I assume we're proceeding with the planned disclosure? Morticia inquired, accepting a goblet of what appeared to be some form of goblin wine that glowed faintly purple. Indeed, Ragnarok confirmed with obvious satisfaction. The official audit results will be released to the press tomorrow morning, including detailed findings regarding unauthorized withdrawals, misappropriated heirlooms, and the Goblin Nation's formal recognition of the Addams guardianship. Harry had been prepared for this aspect of their strategy. The public revelation of Dumbledore's financial misconduct with the Potter accounts would create a scandal that would significantly undermine the headmaster's ability to interfere with Harry's current guardianship arrangements. I understand Gringotts has also prepared a statement regarding the soul fragment that was removed from Mr. Potter's scar. Wednesday asked, demonstrating her thorough understanding of their legal and public relations strategy despite her youth. Correct, Miss Addams, Ragnarok replied with approval. Without specifically identifying it as a Horcrux, a term best kept from public knowledge, we have prepared documentation regarding the dark magical artifact that was safely extracted through Goblin Addams' cooperative magic. The implication that Dumbledore either failed to detect or chose to ignore such dangerous magic will further complicate his position. The meeting continued with a review of Harry's financial status. The Potter fortune had grown substantially under joint Goblin and Addams management, and the finalization of arrangements for his Hogwarts expenses. A special Gringotts draft book was provided, linked directly to his student trust but incorporating security features to prevent unauthorized use. Any attempt to magically confiscate or redirect this draft book will trigger immediate notification to both Gringotts and Addams Manor, Griphook explained as he demonstrated its security enchantments. Additionally, it will provide a monthly statement of all expenditures, ensuring transparency in your financial activities while at school. Their business concluded, the family prepared to continue their shopping expedition. As they exited Gringotts, they found an even larger crowd gathered outside, word having spread rapidly throughout the alley that Harry Potter had returned to the wizarding world. "Remember," Morticia murmured as they descended the marble steps, "maintain composure regardless of the questions asked. We anticipated this attention." Harry nodded, straightening his shoulders and adopting the dignified expression he had practiced. The crowd parted before them, though numerous hands reached out as though hoping to touch the boy who lived. Several voices called out questions. "Mr. Potter. Where have you been all these years? Is it true you were raised by Muggles? Are you excited about starting at Hogwarts? And, inevitably, did you know who really gave you that scar?" Before Harry could determine which, if any, questions to acknowledge, a flash of magical photography temporarily blinded him. When his vision cleared, he found himself facing a witch in acid green robes, her blonde hair set in elaborate curls, a crocodile skin handbag clutched in her taloned fingers. "Rita Skeeter, Daily Prophet," she introduced herself with a predatory smile. "Our readers have been positively dying to know where the famous Harry Potter has been hiding. Care to comment on the rumors that you were being held against your will by dark wizards?" The absurdity of the question almost made Harry laugh, especially with the Addams family standing protectively around him. Instead, he responded with the measured tone Morticia had helped him perfect. "Miss Skeeter, I'm simply here to purchase my school supplies, like any other first-year student. If the Prophet has questions regarding my guardianship or previous living arrangements, I'd suggest contacting Gringotts for their upcoming press release on these matters." Rita's eyes narrowed at this unexpected response from an 11-year-old. Before she could press further, Gomez stepped forward with his characteristic exuberance. "Marvelous to meet a member of the magical press," he exclaimed, pumping Rita's hand with enough force to disrupt her quill's levitation charm. "The Addams family has a long and colorful history with journalists. My great-uncle Catastrophus Addams once provided an exclusive interview to the New York Ghost that resulted in the reporter developing a fascinating case of spontaneous linguistic inversion. Spoke backwards for the rest of his life. Made for wonderfully creative obituaries." Rita extracted her hand from Gomez's enthusiastic grip, looking slightly alarmed. "And you are Gomez Addams, Harry's legal guardian these past 3 years." He gestured grandly to the rest of the family. "My wife, Morticia, our children Wednesday and Pugsley, and my mother Eudora, though we all call her Grandmama." The reporter's eyes widened as she took in the unconventional family. Her quill, having recovered its balance, began scratching frantically across her notepad. "The Addamses," she repeated, recognition dawning. "The American magical family known for unusual magical practices." "The very same," Gomez confirmed cheerfully. "Though we maintain residences worldwide. Our British estate has been particularly active since Harry joined our family." Rita's expression suggested she had just been handed a journalistic gift beyond her wildest dreams. "And how exactly did Harry Potter come to be in your custody, Mr. Addams?" The wizarding world was assured he was being raised in a secure, undisclosed location. A fascinating story involving goblin banking laws, unauthorized financial activities, and the rather appalling treatment of the boy who lived by his previous Muggle guardians, Morticia interjected smoothly. "All officially documented and soon to be released by Gringotts. I'm sure the Prophet will want the complete file rather than mere fragments." Rita's eyes gleamed with predatory interest. "Are you suggesting there were irregularities in Harry Potter's placement after his parents' deaths? Irregularities that might involve certain highly placed magical authorities?" "We wouldn't dream of preempting the Goblins' official disclosure," Morticia replied with a smile that managed to be both gracious and vaguely threatening. But I believe tomorrow's financial section will be particularly compelling reading. This calculated hint at scandal involving financial impropriety, catnip to a reporter of Rita's inclinations, had the intended effect of redirecting her focus from Harry himself to the larger implications of the Addams guardianship. I look forward to reading Gringotts' statement with great interest, Rita purred, her quill continuing its frantic notation. Perhaps after you've completed your shopping, Mr. Potter might have time for a more in-depth interview about his unusual upbringing. Unfortunately, our schedule today is quite full, Harry replied, employing the polite deflection techniques he had practiced. Between acquiring my school supplies and certain private family matters at Gringotts, I won't have time for formal interviews. Another time, perhaps, Rita suggested, clearly reluctant to let go of such a promising story. The wizarding world has so many questions about their young hero. Indeed they do, Wednesday spoke up, her solemn voice drawing Rita's attention. Questions like why no one from Magical Child Welfare Services ever checked on Harry's well-being with his Muggle relatives. Or why certain powerful wizards represented Harry as being safely raised in loving circumstances when he was actually sleeping in a cupboard under the stairs. The blunt delivery of these accusations left Rita momentarily speechless, exactly as Wednesday had intended. Before the reporter could recover, Gomez clapped his hands decisively. Well, this has been delightful, but school supplies await. Wands to purchase, books to collect, possibly some exotic pets to consider. Harry expressed interest in a two-headed snake, but I've suggested a carnivorous plant might be more practical for a dormitory setting. Taking advantage of Rita's distraction, the family smoothly continued down the alley steps, leaving the reporter staring after them with an expression that promised tomorrow's profit would feature Harry Potter's return to Wizarding Society as its lead story. Nicely handled, Wednesday, Harry murmured as they made their way toward Madame Malkin's robes for all occasions, their first planned stop. Giving Rita just enough to ensure the right questions are raised in her article. Wednesday inclined her head slightly in acknowledgement. The reporter has a reputation for sensationalism and exaggeration. By providing specific, verifiable accusations, we force her to include factual elements that serve our purposes. Their shopping expedition continued in similar fashion, creating a sensation at each establishment they visited while carefully managing the narrative through strategic comments and the occasional shocking revelation delivered in Wednesday's deadpan manner. At Madame Malkin's, Harry was fitted for his school robes alongside a pale, pointed-faced boy who introduced himself as Draco Malfoy and immediately launched into a monologue about Hogwarts houses and broomstick regulations. The boy's confident pontificating faltered when he realized exactly who he was speaking to, and collapsed entirely when Pugsley cheerfully demonstrated a miniature explosive device that turned a discarded piece of fabric into a small, harmless fireball. "My father will hear about this," Draco muttered as he hastily departed, leaving his fitting unfinished. "Curious child," Morticia observed. "The Malfoys have a certain reputation in British magical circles, old wealth, significant political influence, and historically questionable allegiances during the last Wizarding War. Lucius Malfoy claimed to have been under the Imperius curse when found among Voldemort's followers," Wednesday added, displaying her thorough knowledge of recent Wizarding history. A claim many found convenient rather than convincing. Their visit to Flourish and Blots proved equally memorable, with Gomez enthusiastically examining the more obscure magical texts while loudly comparing them to the much more comprehensive editions in the Addams library. Harry selected his required schoolbooks plus several supplementary volumes recommended by Morticia, while Wednesday systematically evaluated the store's restricted section with such intensity that the proprietor eventually asked if she needed special permission from the ministry to browse those particular shelves. By the time they reached Ollivander's, word of their progress through the alley had spread to the point that a small crowd had gathered outside the wand shop, hoping to witness Harry Potter's selection of his first wand. The narrow, dusty shop could scarcely accommodate the entire Addams family, so Morticia suggested that only she and Gomez accompany Harry inside while the others waited nearby. Garrick Ollivander proved to be exactly as described in their research, an ethereal, slightly unsettling presence with pale, moon-like eyes that seemed to see more than physical appearance. He recognized Harry immediately, commenting on his resemblance to his parents and the distinctive shape of his scar, though he appeared momentarily puzzled by the silvery, faded quality of the lightning bolt mark. "I've been expecting you, Mr. Potter," the wand-maker said softly. "Though I confess, I did not anticipate you would arrive in such distinctive company." Gomez beamed at what he clearly took as a compliment. "The Addamses have a long history with wand lore. My own wand contains a core of thestral tail hair wrapped around a splinter from the gallows that hung my great-grandfather. Temperamental in transfiguration but exceptional for curses." Ollivander's eyebrows rose slightly. "Indeed? American craftsmanship, I presume. They take a more personalized approach to core materials than I typically employ." The wand-making process proved more complex than Harry had anticipated. Wand after wand was placed in his hand, only to be snatched away by Ollivander before he could properly test it. Each rejection seemed to delight the wand-maker further, his excitement growing as the pile of unsuitable wands increased. "Tricky customer," Ollivander declared with obvious relish. Not to worry, not to worry. The wand chooses the wizard, Mr. Potter, and somewhere here is a perfect match for you." After nearly 20 failed matches, Ollivander paused, his strange silvery eyes studying Harry with renewed intensity. "I wonder," he murmured, disappearing into the depths of his shop before returning with a dusty box that he opened with unusual reverence. "Holly and phoenix feather, 11 inches, nice and supple," he described as Harry reached for the wand inside. "An unusual combination." The moment Harry's fingers closed around the wand, he felt a sudden warmth spread through his hand and up his arm. When he raised the wand and gave it an experimental wave, a stream of gold and silver sparks shot from its tip, illuminating the dusty shop like miniature fireworks. "Curious," Ollivander murmured, watching the display with a thoughtful expression. "Most curious." "What's curious?" Harry asked, already suspecting the answer based on the family's research into Voldemort's history. "I remember every wand I've ever sold, Mr. Potter. Every single wand. It so happens that the phoenix whose tail feather resides in your wand gave another feather, just one other. It is curious that you should be destined for this wand when its brother gave you that scar." Despite having anticipated this connection, Harry felt a slight chill at the confirmation. Beside him, Morticia's expression remained impassive, though he sensed her heightened attention. "Yes," Ollivander continued, 13.5 inches. "You. A powerful wand, very powerful, and in the wrong hands. Well, if I had known what that wand was going out into the world to do." "You believe wands share some essence with their wielders, then?" Morticia inquired, her melodious voice betraying none of the strategic interest Harry knew she felt in this information. "The wand chooses the wizard, Mrs. Addams," Ollivander repeated. "That much has always been clear to those of us who study wand lore. What is less understood is why certain connections form, whether the wand senses qualities already present in the wizard, or perhaps shapes those qualities through the relationship that develops." "Fascinating philosophical question," Gomez declared. "Nature versus nurture in magical implements. Reminds me of Great-Uncle Nefarious' animated battle axe, chose its own wielder too, though the selection process was considerably more violent." Ollivander blinked rapidly, momentarily distracted from his ominous musings by Gomez's enthusiastic tangent. Yes, well, ancient axes aside, Mr. Potter, I think we must expect great things from you. After all, he who must not be named did great things, terrible, yes, but great." As they completed the transaction and prepared to leave, Harry couldn't help but notice that Ollivander seemed troubled by something beyond the brother-wand connection. "You've changed since you received that scar, Mr. Potter," the wand-maker observed quietly as he wrapped the wand in brown paper. "Or perhaps, more accurately, something has changed within you. The magical signature is clearer now." "Fascinating." Harry exchanged glances with Morticia, both recognizing that Ollivander had somehow sensed the absence of Voldemort's soul fragment. The wand maker's perceptiveness was both impressive and potentially concerning from a security perspective. Growth and change are the only constants in magic, Morticia replied smoothly. Harry has had excellent guidance these past few years. Indeed he has, Ollivander murmured, his strange eyes lingering on Harry with an unreadable expression. Most unexpected guidance. I look forward to hearing what becomes of you, Mr. Potter. Their emergence from Ollivander's with Harry's wand officially completed their essential shopping. The remainder of the day was spent acquiring supplementary items, a deluxe potion-making kit, additional books beyond the required list, and various magical implements that the Addamses deemed necessary for a proper magical education but which raised eyebrows among the shopkeepers. In the magical menagerie, Harry found himself drawn to a magnificent snowy owl that watched him with intelligent amber eyes from her perch among dozens of more common birds. She's been here for months, the shopkeeper explained, noticing Harry's interest. Bit temperamental, that one. Refuses most owners who've tried to purchase her. Harry approached the owl cautiously, extending a hand toward her perch. The snowy regarded him imperiously for a moment before inclining her head in what seemed like permission to touch her feathers. I think she likes you, the shopkeeper said, sounding surprised. First time I've seen her allow anyone close without trying to remove a finger or two. She's perfect, Harry decided immediately, feeling an instant connection with the proud, independent creature. I'll take her. What will you name her? Wednesday asked as they completed the purchase, the owl now settled in an ornate cage of silver wire that Morticia had selected. Harry considered the owl's regal bearing and intelligent gaze. Hedwig, he decided, recalling a name from one of the magical history texts he'd studied. After the medieval witch who wrote about magical animal communication. An excellent choice, Morticia approved. Saint Hedwig of Silesia was known for her ability to converse with owls and other nocturnal creatures. Some accounts suggest she could transform into an owl herself, though the church naturally suppressed such details. Their final stop of the day was Quality Quidditch Supplies, where Harry examined racing brooms with interest despite the first-year prohibition against bringing personal broomsticks to Hogwarts. Gomez, who had developed an appreciation for the wizarding sport despite having never played it conventionally, the Addams version involved actual cannonballs as bludgers and occasional purposeful mid-air collisions, insisted on purchasing a professional maintenance kit for Harry to use with school brooms. Your father was a Quidditch star, he reminded Harry as they examined the various tools and polishes. Got it in your blood, my boy. Though perhaps with less conventional aerial acrobatics than the Addams approach. As afternoon faded toward evening, the family finally concluded their shopping expedition, loaded with purchases that would be transported back to Addams Manor through more secure means than carrying them through the increasingly crowded alley. Their public appearance had achieved precisely the impact they had intended. By now, every magical newspaper in Britain would be scrambling to prepare stories about Harry Potter's return to Wizarding Society under the guardianship of the mysterious Addams family. Their departure from the Leaky Cauldron was as dramatic as their arrival, with Gomez insisting on leaving a tip for Tom that made the barkeeper's eyes widen in disbelief, and Grandmama distributing small vials of what she claimed was invigorating tonic to several elderly patrons who had been openly staring at Harry throughout their brief stop for refreshments. Best not to actually drink that, Harry whispered to one particularly frail-looking wizard who was examining his vial with confusion. Unless you're particularly fond of growing extra appendages. The man hastily pocketed the vial with a nervous nod of thanks for the warning. Back at Addams Manor, as Harry's new school supplies were arranged in his room and Hedwig explored her new home from a perch specially conjured in the strangling room's corner, the family gathered to assess the day's strategic success. Dumbledore's appearance at the Leaky Cauldron confirms our suspicions, Morticia observed as they reviewed the events over dinner, a particularly exotic stew that Grandmama claimed contained ingredients gathered under the full moon from 7 different continents. He has monitoring charms throughout magical London, specifically calibrated to detect Harry's magical signature. Which makes our security precautions for the journey to Hogwarts all the more important, Wednesday added, methodically dissecting what appeared to be a tentacle on her plate. The Hogwarts Express will be the most vulnerable point in our strategy. Harry nodded, having been thoroughly briefed on the security concerns surrounding his journey to school. While most students simply boarded the train at King's Cross Station with minimal protection beyond standard ministry monitoring, Harry's status and the now open conflict with Dumbledore required additional measures. The Goblins have arranged for a security team to monitor the platform discreetly, Gomez reminded them. And our legal representative will accompany you until boarding is complete, ensuring all documentation regarding your guardianship is properly acknowledged by the Hogwarts representative on duty. Which will likely be Minerva McGonagall, Morticia added. According to our research, she serves as deputy headmistress and typically oversees the arrival of first-year students. A formidable witch, by all accounts, though firmly aligned with Dumbledore in most matters. Her correspondence regarding Harry's special enrollment circumstances was professionally neutral, Gomez noted. Neither overtly hostile to our guardianship nor particularly welcoming. Proper Scottish reserve, one might say. The remainder of August passed in a flurry of final preparations. Harry spent hours each day reviewing both standard first-year magical theory and the additional knowledge the Addamses deemed essential, wandless magic techniques, defensive spells beyond the first-year curriculum, and what Grandmama called, practical potioning for survival situations, which seemed to focus primarily on identifying and countering poisons. Wednesday continued her role as his most dedicated tutor, drilling Harry on everything from proper wand movements to the political alignments of prominent wizarding families he might encounter at Hogwarts. Her detailed knowledge of British magical society was impressive for someone who had spent limited time in the country. The social dynamics at Hogwarts are governed by centuries of tradition and prejudice, she explained during one such lesson, as Harry practiced the precise wand movement for a shielding charm she insisted could be adapted for first-year magical capabilities despite being officially taught only to third years. The house system encourages tribal thinking, with Slytherin and Gryffindor representing the most extreme polarization. And I'll likely be placed in Gryffindor because of my parents? Harry asked, repeating the shield charm motion until Wednesday nodded her approval. Perhaps, she acknowledged. Though your time with us may have influenced your development in ways the Sorting Hat will recognize. The important thing is to avoid being defined by whichever house you're sorted into. House loyalty is expected, but surrendering your identity to house stereotypes is intellectual laziness. Harry appreciated Wednesday's unsentimental approach to Hogwarts social dynamics. While Gomez tended toward enthusiastic generalizations, Gryffindors charge in where sensible wizards fear to tread. Admirable but often fatal, and Morticia focused on the historical significance of the founder's magical specialties, Wednesday provided practical analysis of how house affiliation would affect Harry's day-to-day experience at school. Remember, she advised on the evening before his departure, your first allegiance is to yourself and your family, not to arbitrary divisions created by a thousand-year-old educational system. The Addamses have never confined themselves to conventional categories, and neither should you. The morning of September 1st dawned appropriately gloomy, with ominous thunderclouds gathering over Addams Manor as though the weather itself recognized the significance of the day. Harry woke early, finding Hedwig already alert on her perch, her amber eyes watching as he completed his final packing. "We're going to Hogwarts today," he told the owl, who hooted softly in what seemed like understanding. "You can fly there directly if you prefer. Morticia says the Ollery is quite comfortable, though probably less interesting than your perch here." Hedwig ruffled her feathers in what Harry interpreted as a preference for independent travel. Over the past month, she had proven to be an extraordinarily intelligent companion, seeming to understand complex instructions and demonstrating an almost uncanny ability to locate anyone Harry wished to contact. Breakfast that morning was an elaborate affair, with Grandmama preparing all of Harry's favorites, including a dark purple syrup for the pancakes that she claimed contained essence of clarity, to sharpen his mind for the journey ahead. "The first day at a new school is always significant," Morticia observed as they ate. "Particularly for someone in your position, Harry. First impressions will shape much of your experience in the coming months. Just be yourself," Gomez advised cheerfully, demonstrating his unique approach to pancake consumption by spearing an entire stack with his fork and consuming it in one enthusiastic bite. "The Potter-Addams combination is guaranteed to make an impression." Perhaps with slightly less explosive demonstration than Pugsley might recommend, Morticia added with a gentle smile toward her son, who was currently attempting to create a miniature volcano in his syrup puddle using what appeared to be a highly unstable magical catalyst. Only use the smoke bombs in genuine emergencies, Pugsley agreed reluctantly. And maybe save the portable swamp for the Halloween feast. Makes a better impression when everyone's already in costume. The journey to King's Cross Station was accomplished via a combination of magical and mundane transportation, first a port key to a secure location in London, then a deliberately ordinary taxi to the station itself. This approach was designed to minimize magical tracking while maintaining the appearance of a normal family seeing their child off to boarding school. The Addamses had moderated their appearance somewhat for this public outing in Muggle London, though their version of inconspicuous still drew curious glances from passers-by. Gomez had reluctantly abandoned his most dramatic cape in favor of what he considered a subdued pinstriped suit, albeit one with a watch chain made from genuine Goblin silver, while Morticia wore an elegant black dress that, while less flowing than her usual attire, still managed to suggest Gothic sensibilities. Wednesday and Pugsley, in Harry's opinion, made the most convincing showing of normalcy, having adapted to the concept of casual Muggle clothing with surprising ease. Only their solemn expressions and Wednesday's perpetual braids marked them as unusual among the crowds of children milling around the station. As they approached the barrier between platforms 9 and 10, Harry felt a curious mixture of excitement and apprehension. Beyond that magical entrance lay the Hogwarts Express, which would carry him away from the security and unconventional comfort of Addams Manor toward an education his parents had valued but which would place him directly in Dumbledore's sphere of influence. "Remember everything we've discussed," Morticia said quietly, placing a gentle hand on his shoulder. "Trust your instincts, maintain your boundaries, and know that we are always accessible through the communication channels we've established. And if anyone gives you trouble," Pugsley added helpfully, "the expandable swamp in the secret compartment of your trunk works best if you activate it with the blue trigger, not the red one. Red is for the version with the carnivorous tadpoles." "Noted," Harry replied with a grin, grateful for the moment of levity. "Time to cross over," Gomez announced, checking his unusual pocket watch, which featured 13 hours and occasionally emitted small puffs of green smoke. "Our legal representative should be waiting on platform 9 3/4 with the final documentation." Their passage through the barrier was accomplished without incident, revealing the magical platform beyond with its scarlet steam engine billowing white smoke. The platform was already crowded with wizarding families saying goodbye to children of various ages, many of whom paused in their farewells to stare as the Addams family emerged onto the platform. As predicted, their legal representative, a formidable witch in formal robes bearing the insignia of the International Confederation of Wizards, was waiting near the platform entrance. Beside her stood a tall, severe-looking woman in emerald green robes whom Harry immediately identified as Professor McGonagall from the family's research. Right on time, the legal witch, Ms. Vartian, greeted them with professional efficiency. "Professor McGonagall has agreed to officially receive the guardianship documentation as deputy headmistress." McGonagall's expression was difficult to read as she surveyed the Addams family, her gaze lingering on Harry with particular intensity. "Mr. Potter," she acknowledged with a Scottish brogue. "Welcome to the Hogwarts Express. I trust you're prepared for the school year." "Yes, Professor," Harry replied politely. "I'm looking forward to continuing my education at Hogwarts." Something flickered in McGonagall's expression, surprise, perhaps, at his composed demeanor, or possibly recognition of qualities that reminded her of his parents. "Your mother and father were exceptional students," she said after a moment. "Particularly in my subject, Transfiguration." "So I've heard," Harry responded with genuine interest. "I've been studying their academic records and achievements." This seemed to further surprise the deputy headmistress, though she quickly masked it behind professional detachment as she turned her attention to the legal documents being presented by Ms. Vartian. These confirm the Addams family's legal guardianship of Mr. Potter, as recognized by Gringotts and the ICW, the lawyer explained, pointing out specific sections of the lengthy parchment. Additionally, they outline the special provisions regarding Mr. Potter's medical care, educational decisions, and security arrangements while at Hogwarts. McGonagall's eyebrows rose progressively higher as she reviewed the extensive legal framework surrounding Harry's attendance. These are unusually comprehensive provisions, she noted, her tone neutral but her expression suggesting she found the level of detail extraordinary. Merely prudent precautions, Morticia replied smoothly. Given the circumstances of Harry's previous guardianship and certain financial irregularities that have recently come to light. McGonagall's lips thinned at this oblique reference to Dumbledore's actions, but she maintained her professional composure as she magically duplicated the documents and affixed the Hogwarts seal to acknowledge receipt. Hogwarts will respect these legal arrangements, she stated formally, though something in her tone suggested she had reservations. Mr. Potter will receive the same education and opportunities as any other student. With the specified protections, Ms. Vartian emphasized. Including the requirement that any medical treatment, disciplinary action, or unusual educational activities must receive prior approval from his guardians. So noted, McGonagall replied, her Scottish accent becoming slightly more pronounced, until, Harry suspected, that she was not entirely pleased with these constraints on Hogwarts' traditional autonomy. The train whistle sounded, indicating 10 minutes until departure. Around them, families were making final farewells, helping younger children board with their trunks, and delivering last-minute advice and admonishments. I believe it's time for Harry to find a compartment, Morticia observed. The journey to Hogwarts is an important tradition in itself, a liminal space between home and school where first friendships often form. McGonagall nodded in agreement, seeming to approve of this perspective. Indeed, Mrs. Addams. Many lifelong wizarding relationships begin on the Hogwarts Express. She turned to Harry with what might have been the ghost of a smile. I look forward to seeing you at the sorting ceremony this evening, Mr. Potter. Despite any unusual arrangements, I believe you will find Hogwarts to be a welcoming home. With that, she excused herself to assist a bewildered-looking family who were clearly muggles accompanying a nervous first-year witch. The moment of parting had arrived. Harry found himself unexpectedly emotional as he faced the family that had rescued him from the Dursleys and given him both love and the tools to protect himself in the wizarding world. Remember, Wednesday said seriously, the communication journal is keyed to your magical signature. No one else can read what's written there, but as an additional precaution, we've established the code phrases we discussed. Harry nodded, thinking of the innocent-looking journal concealed among his school supplies, enchanted to communicate instantly with its twin in Wednesday's possession. And don't forget to feed Socrates and Plato their weekly mouse, Pugsley added, referring to the two-headed Runspore now hidden in a specially designed habitat within Harry's trunk, another secret companion accompanying him to Hogwarts despite school regulations limiting students to an owl, cat, or toad. I've packed additional nutritive potions in the secret compartment of your trunk, Grandmama informed him, pressing a small velvet pouch into his hand. This one's for emergencies only, 3 drops neutralizes most common poisons, 5 drops induces temporary invisibility, and the whole vial creates a smokescreen that smells convincingly of burning hair. Thank you, Grandmama, Harry said with genuine appreciation, knowing that her unusual gifts were expressions of genuine care. My boy, Gomez declared, clapping him on the shoulder with uncharacteristic restraint. The first Potter Addams to attend Hogwarts in generations. Your parents would be proud of the young wizard you've become, and so are we. Morticia stepped forward last, elegant and composed as always, yet with genuine emotion in her dark eyes. You carry both families with you, Harry, she said softly. Potter courage and Addams cunning, a formidable combination. Never forget that you have a home with us, regardless of what you discover at Hogwarts. She embraced him briefly, a gesture of affection the reserved woman rarely displayed in public, and Harry felt the full weight of what these people had done for him, rescuing him from neglect, healing the wound of Voldemort's soul fragment, teaching him to embrace his magical heritage without fear or shame, and preparing him to face whatever challenges awaited at Hogwarts. I'll make you proud, he promised as the final whistle blew, signaling imminent departure. You already have, Morticia assured him. Now go, your journey awaits. With a final wave to his unusual but beloved family, Harry boarded the Hogwarts Express, his enchanted trunk floating behind him with a subtle charm Morticia had taught him. As he moved down the corridor searching for an empty compartment, he was acutely aware of the whispers and stares following his progress. "It's him, Harry Potter. Did you see the scar? Who were those strange people seeing him off?" Finding a compartment near the end of the train that was occupied only by a round-faced boy searching frantically under the seats for something, Harry paused at the door. "Mind if I join you?" he asked. "Most of the other compartments are full." The boy looked up, his expression shifting from frustration to shock as he recognized Harry. "Why, you're Harry Potter. And you are?" Harry prompted gently, employing the polite but direct social approach Morticia had taught him. "And Neville Longbottom," the boy stammered. "I've lost my toad, Trevor. He keeps getting away from me." "I might be able to help," Harry offered, recalling that the Longbottoms had been allies of his parents during the war against Voldemort. "I have some experience with reptiles, though toads are a bit different." As Harry assisted Neville in the search for his wayward pet, he glanced out the window to see the Addams family still standing on the platform, a striking tableau against the more conventionally dressed wizarding families. Gomez waved enthusiastically while Wednesday gave a solemn nod that conveyed more than words could have. The train lurched forward, beginning its journey toward Hogwarts. Harry felt a momentary pang as his family receded from view, but it was quickly replaced by anticipation for what lay ahead. He had been prepared as thoroughly as possible, armed with knowledge both conventional and esoteric, protected by legal frameworks and magical precautions, and supported by a family that, while undeniably strange, had given him the confidence to face whatever awaited him in the wizarding world. Harry Potter was going to Hogwarts, not as the malleable pawn Dumbledore had intended to shape, nor as the ignorant, downtrodden child the Dursleys had tried to create, but as the heir to both the Potter legacy and the Addams traditions. A young wizard comfortable with both light and darkness, capable of navigating the complex political landscape that awaited him, and determined to forge his own path regardless of others' expectations. The wizarding world thought they knew what to expect from the boy who lived. They were about to discover just how wrong they were. The end. Thank you for watching this video. Please be sure to subscribe to our channel and like this video.